across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, it is absolutely fantastic to have your company today. Lots I want to hear from you today. I mean, you can always WhatsApp us if you haven't had your phone stolen recently. Yeah, of course, that is absolutely the leading story today. We've got a war in the Middle East, for goodness sake. We've got goodness knows what else happening. We've got another doctor's strike. Of course, we've got another doctor's strike coming. We've got plenty going on. And yeah, I'm sorry, the mystery over this mobile phone that mysteriously got stolen, or did it, as many people are now questioning, seems to be dominating the news. Why didn't Morgan McSweeney tell the police that he was the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff at number 10 and had some rather important numbers and information and messages on his phone? Why didn't Downing Street security team try to recover it? Why is the Prime Minister and many others in government still claiming, in the Prime Minister's own words yesterday, a little bit far-fetched to claim this is all linked to the Mandelson scandal, when I'm going to explain to you the next couple of moments why it's really not far-fetched at all. Going to be talking about that. Going to be talking about the new BBC Director General. Is he going to be the breath of fresh air they claim he's going to be? He used to be on the board at the Guardian newspaper. I think we know the answer to that question. Plus, this extraordinary case in America, YouTuber Meta losing a US court case to a 20-year-old woman who claims that she was addicted to both YouTube and to Instagram from the age of 6 and the age of 9. Apparently on them all day. Sweetheart, you need to be suing your parents for not doing their job properly, looking after you, rather than suing these big companies. Now, I'm no fan of ththese big companies. I've had my run-ins with them myself. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Plenty to get in touch with. Crucially, let's be honest, I'd love to hear from you about Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff. He reported his phone was stolen a month after, quite coincidentally, Mandelson sacking, and all his WhatsApp messages had been lost. What is your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. And as I say, if you haven't had your phone wiped and it hasn't been stolen by someone on a bike somewhere in either Pimlico or East London, I can't remember which, then do get in touch that way as well. I'm delighted to say joining me for the chat today is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. And as always, Philip, never a bad day to have you on when it comes to the stories. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, it doesn't matter what story it is. You know, coming from my background, and I can say this because in Northern Ireland I've got an opinion on anything and everything. It's just genetic.
Absolutely. Look, a lot of people, I think, will be going, oh, God, it's some bloke. I mean, let's face it, most people wouldn't recognise him in the street, wouldn't have known his name until, a year ago. And his phone got stolen. Who cares about who it was, what it was? But it does matter. This was the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, basically one of the most powerful men in the country. He was helping to run the country at the time. He has since resigned. He was absolutely instrumental in the appointment of Lord Mandelson as the UK's ambassador to the United States, a decision we now know, which was an what we knew, let's face it, we all knew at the time, was a disastrous decision, not just because of the current police investigations into what was denied any wrongdoing, of course, on Manderson's part, into passing on of the allegations of containing the Epstein files, of passing on of vital government information about bailouts and the like when he was business secretary to Jeffrey Epstein. Chinese links, goodness knows what, and the fact that he was best pals, in his own words, with a convicted paedophile after he had been convicted of soliciting an underage girl for prostitution. So it was all a disaster going on. Now, when it, quote, emerged more in more files that about the closeness of this relationship, Mandelson was sacked by the Prime Minister. It cost us 75 grand, by the way, your and my money and a payoff. I don't know why. Gross misconduct shouldn't get a payoff. But we then later saw Morgan McSweeney fall on his sword. He was instrumental in the appointment. But here's the crucial thing. The Prime Minister yesterday said it's a little bit far-fetched, because the idea that somehow everybody could have seen that sometime in the future there'd be a request for this phone, Morgan McSweeney's phone, is to my mind a little bit far-fetched, except the phone was stolen on October the 20th. And only 2 weeks beforehand, lots of conversation, reported, by the way, before he knew his phone had been stolen by Tim Shipman in The Spectator, there was lots of talk about how if the Tories tabled this humble address to demand all the information about this appointment, including the WhatsApps, the emails, the messages, that Morgan McSweeney would, in one of their words, be effed. Can't say the full word on air, effed, because of everything he had on his phone. And miraculously, a week or two later, his phone gets stolen.
And the debate that we're having at the minute, Keir Starmer is sitting going, pew, because they're not focusing on the real thing. Because we're focusing on his phone being stolen. Yeah. We're not focusing on the fact that if you lose your phone or your phone gets stolen, it can be automatically wiped, and therefore the security issue it can be dealt with quite quickly and all the rest of it. But as soon as you get a new one and you put your SIM in and you go tap, 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 all your accounts bring everything back again. So we've now got the Prime Minister, we've got ministers going around saying that, we can't supply this.
This data is gone. They weren't, well, they can be brought back if they are backed up on the cloud. But apparently on government phones, WhatsApp messages are not supposed to be allowed, but they're certainly not backed up because of a third-party server risk. Apparently...
No. No, because WhatsApp backs them up, and it's through your WhatsApp account. So
they exist.
So we're talking about, but that falls into the same game of Wes Streeting turning around saying that he's got this auto delete that you can set up and do it and all the rest. But then he managed to publish several weeks worth of conversations that he had with Lord Battlesome.
But maybe he has that now, but he didn't have it then.
Well, no, but he said he'd always had that, and therefore we're getting inconsistency in everything from that's coming out from every government minister.
This is why, and we're going to talk to him later in the show. Carl Tanner, who's a Labour MP, who's been, he basically thinks the part of the government isn't doing the right thing on quite a few big issues. He wants to be further left, put it that way. But he said yesterday, quite categorically on X, I don't believe McSwindle, as he's referred to, Morgan McSweeney, has his phone stolen. And he also said the day before, the dog ate my homework, defence doesn't wash. But here's the thing: the Met Police were accused of basically, he reports his phone stolen. The Met were too busy to investigate at the time, and nothing ever happened. But don't worry, the phone was wiped remotely by Number 10, wasn't an issue. And then we learn that he called the police after he said he had a government phone, after he had actually contacted Number 10. This is the protocol. You're supposed to contact Number 10 security, and even the cabinet secretary when you're that senior, and say, okay, phone, lots of important stuff on it, unlocked because I was texting or on the phone at the time. So he said he reported that. But here's the crucial thing is, so there was no follow-up from Number 10 security. Number 10 will not say whether there was, there wasn't, but, well, was there any? We were told that the police say, well, we did try and follow up. We weren't too busy to investigate. We called him twice. He had a personal mobile as well. We called him twice the next day. During working hours, he did not answer his phone. Crucially, they were rather, basically, stopped from doing a proper investigation. Not that they normally bother doing an investigation. Let's not pretend the Met Police do normally bother investigating. But if they'd known who he was, they'd have... they say, A, he didn't say who he was, and the transcript proved he didn't say who he was. He just said it was a government phone. He also gave them the wrong road name. Now, it was thought they'd written down the wrong road name. No, he gave the wrong road name, and he was actually in Pimlico. He says that he was in sort of central London where he was mugged, but actually the address he gave, a street he gave, was in East London in Stepney. Now, when they actually call-handed 2 or 3 questions, asked specifically about, so did he run upwards towards Stepney Green? And he, having 2 or 3 prompts that the caller had the wrong address, did not correct and actually said, yes, that is what happened. Now, given that he was walking through Pimlico, an area he knows well, we understand, that's all a bit bizarre. Here's the other crucial thing. And this is the thing I find really bizarre. Everyone was reporting today, what we'd been told before, that his phone had been stolen by a balaclava-clad thief on a bike. If you read the police transcript... There's no balaclava. No balaclava mentioned at all, at any point. I would have thought that's the sort of thing you might mention, even in a bit of a panic, having just had your phone stolen. He says he was a black guy, but the message that had gone out to everyone else is that he was wearing a balaclava. He could be a black guy wearing a balaclava, but you'd think you'd mention the balaclava in the police message, wouldn't you? And he didn't.
And the police would have said, are there any distinguishing features? Can you describe what he looked like?
He was young, and how young, and his build, and the like. Yeah. But the balaclava thing did not get mentioned once. None of this is adding up. Nope. None of this is adding up. Also, tracking the phone. I've got Find My Phone on my phone. Yeah. I've looked up, can you still track a phone if it's been remotely wiped, remotely erased, and remotely shut off? Yes, you can, for about 24 hours.
Well, the other thing that we've got is a little thing called Government Communications Headquarters, who will look after the security for
GCHQ.
Number 10. And they will be able to track the phone even after that 24 hours. They'll be able to track the handset.
They can.
There's a code that the handset is unique to a handset. There's a code that's unique to the SIM card that's in there. You put the two together, and you can work everything out that's in that.
So, and this, we don't know whether that was done or not. But given his seniority, given that we are, involved in, hostilities in Ukraine against Russia, we've had cybersecurity attacks. We know the concern about Iran. All of the issues, and given what was going on with Mandelson, and so on, it is not inconceivable that the security services would say, yeah, we need to check that this phone wasn't stolen by somebody from, operating on behalf of a foreign government.
Well,
would that be a genuine issue?
Oh, 100%. The first thing that I want to do is to know that the time difference that there was between the phone leaving Morgan McSweeney's control and it being wiped by Number 10.
Because 2 or 3 minutes.
Because that time that's in there, if it's a sophisticated thief, even if the phone's locked and everything else, you can plug it into little devices, the same sort of ones the police have got whenever they're doing phone forensics, and download everything that's on it and take that away. Yeah. And therefore that piece of information is critical, and given his position in government, even more critical. So the more you drill into this, the more the lies that are coming out are shocking.
Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has said that, well, OK, if we can't produce his messages, then he must come before Parliament, he must come before a committee of MPs and answer questions about those messages and what was there. The thing is, what is in those messages? There'll probably be some. He's already resigned. We're pretty sure we know why various people have gone from government recently, and it's because they've written quite embarrassing messages about probably how useless the Prime Minister is, and basically how, look, we're going to get you, Mandy, you're our big mate, you're our mentor, we're gonna make sure you get that role, don't worry about anything. They're probably quite embarrassing messages, but God knows what else is there. And if they are covering this up,
what else are they covering up?
What else? Well, we know governments cover up everything.
But again, if I message you, I've got the message on my phone. I lose my phone.
I have told you to stop doing that.
You've got the messages on your phone.
Yeah.
Now the police have arrested Mandelson and therefore have got control of all of his devices. And therefore those messages that are from Morgan McSweeney, the police will have. Now they're part of a formal criminal investigation, and therefore that's something that the police will not be able to release to Parliament at the moment until that investigation is complete. But the messages.
Now, we didn't know there was a police investigation back in October the 20th, did we?
No, we didn't.
It was just basically this was basically there was an expectation that there was going to be this humble address tabled by the Tories in the Commons to basically force the government to release all the documents. And this was about showing what poor judgment the Prime Minister had, and showing also, crucially, that he had lied to the House of Commons at PMQs, which I've always believed he'd done, when he said he did not know, he did not have information about Peter Mandelson at the time of the appointment. Now, the only basis on which he didn't know is he didn't really pay any attention, and that looks very strongly the case. But that's not a defence.
Yeah, but he doesn't pay any attention. That's the case. He spent an awful lot of time before the general election turning around saying that he was head of the Crown Prosecution Service. He was a barrister that focused on things. He was a detail man. He focused on detail. So he can't be one thing and then use another thing as defence. I'm sorry. This undermines the Prime Minister yet again. But he's Teflon like Trump.
Well, you say that. I think this is going to end up being a resigning matter. I think even the fact that Morgan McSweeney has gone, that hasn't made any of it go away. The Prime Minister appointed him. The Prime Minister did not sack him. He resigned. He didn't. He wasn't sacked for wrongdoing. It wasn't exposed. The Prime Minister himself was giving ridiculous defences. Like as I said, the idea that somehow everybody could have seen that sometime in the future there'd be a request for the phone, to my mind, a little bit far-fetched. They were literally, Labour officials were literally discussing that only a week earlier. None of this adds up. None of this tallies. It looks like a cover-up, as lots of people are saying. saying, as with Watergate, it's the cover-up. Okay, this doesn't involve, criminal burglary of an office in Washington, but this does smack of a massive cover-up. I mean, it's a cover-up of the decision-making process to appoint our most senior diplomat in the world, a man who had already been sacked from 2 jobs for dishonesty, who had a very questionable history, who's known to be friends with a convicted paedophile. The stuff that has come out since in the Epstein files, which is being currently investigated by the police, as I say, no charges have been brought. It must be stressed at this point. However, this is looking like it's embarrassing for the country, certainly embarrassing for the Prime Minister, but it could have been a very big risk, a security risk for this country. It was a security risk for our country. Risk of bribery, of blackmail. Yeah. We are looking at a very, very, very serious misjudgment here. And the misjudgment was the Prime Minister's. So this isn't about some bloke no one had heard of whose phone was stolen and selling a few little questionable things that don't tally. We are talking about the Prime Minister of this country basically, apparently, overseeing, it would appear at this point, a very, very questionable cover-up of very poor judgment that put Britain's security at risk. That, by the way, is a story. That is worth discussing on a radio show, worth putting on the front pages. This is not a little Westminster bubble who he said, she said.
And everything within that, the processes and protocols that are in place. And again, Keir Starmer has said he's a process man. Whether it comes to the security clearances, whether it comes to reporting stolen phones, whether it comes to everything else, nothing has followed the process. And every time it's been bypassed, Keir Starmer's been found out. And I think the Labour front bench and anyone who is vying to be the next Prime Minister will be hoping that the 1st of May comes around very quickly indeed, because that's when they want him to go. But the damage that is being done to... Or 2nd May, the damage that's being done to Labour ministers at the moment is shocking, because they're all being rolled out, they're all being given false stories, and they're all lying to the general public about what's going on.
Unless they are being lied to themselves.
Well,
but at that point,
but common sense. You come in and go, common sense says this isn't true. Why do you want me to say it?
Yeah. We'll talk to Carl Town, the Labour MP, about that in a few minutes. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. I think this smells very, very, very fishy. I mean, he's the unluckiest man on the planet. He's also somebody who's apparently running our government until a few months ago, who can't even give a vaguely coherent police report. I'm sorry.
What colour was the balaclava? Oh, might have been sort of like the kneecap coloured balaclava. Does he support those sorts of organisations?
Who knows? Do you know what I mean? It's just, again, there are just so many things that just do not tally. And this is a national security issue.
Oh, 100%.
Talking of national security, we've got British special forces. They're being allowed to storm Putin's shadow fleet of ships. Yet another Downing Street U-turn that's been announced today. John Healey, the Defence Secretary, doing his whole sort of hand-wringing thing he keeps doing on the telly. Find him insufferable to watch. I'm not going to lie. But again, what's the point of us doing that? These are the shadow fleet of ships carrying all the oil, which is supposedly sanctioned, and yet Donald Trump has just basically said, relaxing oil sanctions.
He's going to relax the sanctions for a short period of time. The Americans have led the way in capturing these shadow fleet ships, and they've done it in the mid-Atlantic. The French have done it, and the UK is very quick to turn around and say, we have supported the French. Well, we haven't. We sort of sent them some information. But so we're behind France in doing it. We're also behind the Belgians in doing it. And this is political indecision once again. It was obvious whenever the sanctions came out, and Keir Starmer came out months and months ago, said, we're going to deal with this, and then did nothing about it.
It's interesting. Coming back to Iran, though, Donald Trump has just put out a post saying NATO nations have done absolutely nothing to help with the lunatic nation, how militarily decimated of Iran. So now military... It's very difficult to read his post because they're in capital letters. It's quite hard. Now military decimated of Iran. The USA needs nothing from NATO, but never forget this very important point in time. He's very angry. He says, but it's interesting. So is Iran. They've rejected Donald Trump's peace deal, simply saying that there are no proper talks going on. Trump has vowed overnight to unleash hell on Iran for doing so. Where do you think we are in terms of that war?
Right, how long have you got? Right, the NATO bit, first of all, there's a process that the Americans could follow to get NATO formally involved, and that's bringing something in front of the North Atlantic Committee, the NAC as it's called, to get NATO members to discuss it, debate it, and get NATO agreement. It is outside NATO's immediate area of responsibility, so NATO countries have no reason to get involved whatsoever. And he therefore he hasn't formally asked. So this is a Donald Trump rant. Where are we at the minute? Well, the peace proposals that the Americans put to someone, we don't know who, in Pakistan, and the Iranian response that came from someone, we don't know who, in the same thing, were two ends of the spectrum, and we're not going to come close together. Yep. Donald Trump has already said, unleash hell. He started to move ground troops into the area. But we're not talking about ground troops like invading Iraq level of ground troops. We're talking about seizing Karg Island. But potentially, unlike Karg Island, there are other islands that have got greater control of the Straits of Hormuz.
Okay. But this isn't about storming
No, it isn't.
Tehran,
it's not about storming Tehran at all. But Donald Trump is building up his military capability. A lot of the deadlines that he's set will expire on Saturday. Mm-hmm. So everything, the rhetoric, as we're going to see ramping up and everything else, will be focusing on what he might do on Saturday. And I can see on Saturday him launching massive military strikes against Iran again, and potentially putting elements of the 82nd Airborne into some of the islands in the Straits of Hormuz to try and start to secure the Straits of Hormuz. It ain't going away, and of course we've been discussing lots in the last couple of weeks the economic impact of that. Just one final story I want to get to before we get to the phone lines in a moment, and this is a lawsuit. It's not legally setting a precedent, but it is kind of the first of its kind in America, where a 20-year-old woman, referred to only as Kaylee, she's accused tech giants, in particular Meta, who own Instagram, and Google, who own YouTube, of basically hooking her on their platforms. She said she started using YouTube at the age of 6. She had the app on her iPod Touch to watch videos. She joined Instagram at the age of 9, got round a block that her mother had put in place. But apparently she spent hours after hours after hours every single day on these sites. She said she became totally addicted. It's contributed to her mental health problems, her depression, and many other issues. It took a jury of California jurors, and this is actually 40 hours of deliberation over 9 days, to decide that the tech giants were negligent in both the design and the operation of their platform. So this isn't about leaving it open for a predatory paedophile to get involved or anything like that. This is or an algorithm sending anorexia sites, things like that. This is the simple fact: you have created sites that, by their definition, by their design, are addictive, and that has harmed this woman's mental health when she was a child. Now, I find this case utterly extraordinary. I think these things are deliberately designed to be addictive. Now, the algorithms are very, very questionable. But here's the thing: why isn't she suing her parents? Because the idea, your child shouldn't have had any of that stuff at the age of 6. She's 20 years old now. It's 14 years ago. This was not the norm. You're crazy if your kid shouldn't be seeing any of this stuff. Certainly not unsupervised. But the fact that she was apparently on it for hours and hours, and then as a primary school age child, so she's at school most of the time. The rest of the time, I mean, you're not leaving your child unsupervised. It's not like a 16-year-old and you don't know what they're doing in their bedroom. We are talking about an abject failure of parenting. Yes, I agree. And yet she's suing a tech giant rather than her parents. Yeah, I agree. And she's admitted to getting around the age controls that the tech giants have put on there, and therefore, and her mum and her mother put on there, and therefore that is negligence as well. I'm sorry, the parents should be prosecuted, but. A lot of these platforms, and I think there's a bigger issue here. A lot of these platforms are not taking responsibility for a lot of the content and the way that content is being used. And we're trying to rely on government bringing in legislation. Legislation is always too far behind where the tech goes. We need the big tech companies to step up and take greater responsibility for what... I agree with you, but I don't think this is the right case. I really don't. I just find it absolutely extraordinary. Parents need to start doing your job. I get it. It's harder with a 14-year-old or 16-year-old. If you've got a 6-year-old doing stuff, if you don't know what your 6-year-old is looking at online, then you're being negligent. You're a really, really rubbish parent. It's as simple as that. You're a lazy, rubbish, negligent parent, and it's your fault and it's your problem for you to deal with. Just because no one else is going to tell you, I'm going to tell you. If you were my best friend, if you're a family member, I would tell you the same thing, because people need to actually start waking up to the fact that they are not doing their job properly and using this tech as a way of babysitting your kids so you can carry on sitting on your phone. Sorry,
You ain't being a good parent, and you need to fess up to that. 10:26 is the time. I want to hear from you. This topic, any of the other topics we're going to be talking about throughout the show. But yeah, Morgan McSweeney's phone theft, absolutely topping the news agenda at the moment. It's not about some bloke and his phone being stolen and the story not adding up. This is about a possible major cover-up at the heart of government, basically overseen by senior figures in Number 10 to stop us getting to the truth about the appointment of Mandelson, a man who should never have been in a position of power at all, given what we already knew about him at the point that he was appointed as the ambassador to the US. This was a massive national security risk for this country, given what we know now, and there's a cover-up. No one I know believes for a nanosecond that Morgan McSweeney's story stands up to proper scrutiny. So what is going on, and why is the Prime Minister covering up for him as well? I want to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. And Morgan McSweeney, if you happen to be listening, you still got your personal phone after resigning from government, give us a call. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:30 is the time. Just a breaking news for you. The Crown Court backlog in England and Wales has hit a record high. Well done, everybody. Of 80,203 cases. That is, according to the Ministry of Justice figures published in the last half hour, up 8% year on year. So it's all going swimmingly well. But I mean, bearing in mind, of course, if we just get rid of juries, then it'll all be solved. Oh, no, it won't at all. But yeah, never mind, eh? Welcome to this government. Welcome to Britain in 2026, folks. Let's go straight to your phone lines. 0344 499 1000, number to call. Have your say on any of the topics, but in particular, the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, reporting his phone stolen a month after Manderson's sacking, and all his WhatsApp messages have been lost. Does it smell fishy to you? Alan's on the line in Salford. Hello, Alan. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia.
Morning.
I am not a conspiracy theorist of any kind, but this one looks rotten, actually, to be honest with you. And I think the security services of this country are being captured by this, whether it's woke left-wingism, I'm sure they are. Because I remember a couple of years ago, was it last year, they said they're not looking at Islamic terrorism anymore. They're looking at far right.
Yeah.
And only one person's been killed by the far right. And then
I don't think they said any more, but the vast majority of people on the watch list and terror attacks and deaths from terror attacks are from Islamists, not the far right.
Yes,
you think the security services aren't looking into this because they're woke?
Yeah, but I'm not on about, the difference in cultures and everything. But it seems a bit rotten, this one. He's lost his phone. He's a government minister, is he? Well, he's not
government advisor.
He's an advisor. Is he an advisor?
Well, he was chief of staff.
Chief of staff in the government, right? So he loses his phone, leaves it open. Did he leave it open?
He was on the phone. He was on the phone when he was snatched.
Stolen from him, yes. But obviously it'll run out at some time and go back to where he needs to put his details in, will it? Or not?
No. It was turned off remotely. We understand very quickly. But the point is, even if it took him 2 minutes to get through to someone and get that done, if it was snatched by someone who wasn't just trying to steal a phone, they were actually a foreign adversary, then they could have taken everything off the phone.
Right, so he reports it to the House of Commons straight away, apparently, but I've read between the lines.
Well, to number 10. Alan, come on, can't keep up with... If you'd been listening for the last 20 minutes, you'd know more.
Oh, okay, you give it to number 10.
Yeah.
Or he reports it to number 10.
Yeah.
So number 10, who did they get in? Obviously, security services first, yes?
Yeah. Apparently.
Well, apparently, okay. So then he reports it to the police and he gives the wrong address.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing. You just think the whole thing's fishy. What do you think's going on then? What do you think's happening?
I think they're covering up the messages that are on there from Mandelson and everybody else towards this when they appointed him. Actually,
do you think the Prime Minister's part of this?
Oh, with no danger, no doubt. I think it's being covered up by the security services.
Why would the security services do that though? That's what I don't get.
I don't know, because I think they've been captured. The old civil service has been captured by this, and that's why they need a radical makeover.
I'll agree with you on that bit. Alan, that's a bit that you say you're not a conspiracy theorist. Sounds quite like a conspiracy theory. Thank you very much indeed for that. Philip, just one line. Has the security services been captured as well? Would they be part of a cover-up?
Well, the security services don't carry warrants like police do, so they have to respond to the policy direction that they're given, and therefore there's a greater chance of political oversight into what they're doing and direction.
Very interesting. That was a very diplomatic answer. The answer was yes. Chris is in Staffordshire. Hello, Chris.
Good morning. I'm a new listener. So
thank you so much for joining us. Where have you been the last 10 years, mate?
Listening to LBC.
What were you thinking? Great to have you on board, sir. What do you want to say?
I just want to... something as I was driving into work this morning sort of made me think is we talk about a WhatsApp message from one person to another, but how about this? If there was a WhatsApp group...
Yeah.
And imagine how many other people would be implicated that are at this moment scurrying under stones and hiding away. So I think actually, as and when that phone is revealed, and hopefully it is, it will highlight so many more things than we perhaps currently are aware of.
And we know that other people in Downing Street have been told to give stuff over that relates to the Mandelson appointment. But again, it's up to them to decide. But we understand, because Morgan McSweeney was very close with Peter Mandelson, he was his mentor effectively, that there would have been, by all accounts, hundreds of one-on-one messages with the Labour peer.
That's it, and I just find it just unbelievable how rotten the government is at the minute. I mean, I'm a professional person in the job that I do, and I do that to the best of my abilities. But with people being in such a public position, I just cannot believe how people are quite happy to be advertising such corruption at the minute. It's just unbelievable, and you see that all the way from the top, the leadership of the council, all the way down to what we see as entitlement these days, of people jumping red lights, of people pinching stuff from shops. It's really
across the board.
This is the erosion of society, really.
Yeah. Chris, thank you very much indeed. It starts rotting at the top, doesn't it? 10:36 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to a former Director of Communications at Number 10. He worked under John Major's government. That's Jonathan Haslam. See what he makes of this whole affair. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:38 is the time. This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me. Get his thoughts on what my next guest has to say. Jonathan Haslam is a former Director of Communications at Number 10, as when John Major was Prime Minister. And Jonathan, love to get your tuppence worth on what you make of this Morgan McSweeney phone theft. I'm pretty sure that WhatsApp wasn't a thing when you were in government, was it?
Yeah, but we did have mobile phones, Julia. Yeah. And good morning to you and Philip.
All right, I wasn't saying it was the dark ages. I mean, come on.
some people have. Julia, I'm generally of the view, having spent 6.5 years in Downing Street, that cock-up rather than conspiracy.
I'm with you all the way on that, yeah.
And believe me, we saw plenty of cock-ups in those times. So I've got an open mind until there's more evidence about it in terms of whether or not McSweeney was pulling a fast one. The idea of him getting together with Keir Starmer and saying in the cabinet room, look, I'm going to lose my phone, just doesn't stack up to reality. But he may have decided to do something. We don't know, and I don't have evidence. But what I've got a real problem with, and I'd be interested in your views and Philip's views on this, if I was in that position, there are a couple of things. First of all, man gets phone stolen from him in street, not a problem. Answer, don't get your phone out on the street.
Oh, come on. I refuse to accept. I have my phone out on the street all the time.
Yeah, well, I don't. I look after it. And
I have the right to have
in
my
central London, and I just do not take the chances. I've seen it happen too often. If you're a government official, you've got a government phone, if you've got sensitive information on it, you just don't do it. And if it is stolen from you, my first call would actually not be to the police. It would be down to the security officer at Number 10 saying,
we understand that he had, in the police transcript, he did say that he'd already spoken to his employers.
Right, I'm sorry, I did not pick that up.
Yeah.
But certainly that would be the first port of call. And if they're not available, and they should be 24/7 available, then you will be talking to the Diplomatic Protection Group, all of whom are sensible fellows, they're police, and you make sure you've got your protocols in place for what happens. Now, there's the good thing. These phones are incredibly sophisticated. It's a government phone. It should be auto-backed up in the system setting that can't be changed. And even if it is lost, then there should be a cache of information which is available up there in the cloud because it's backed up automatically. Now, we shouldn't really be having a debate about is this information available. If it's not, it's a really big problem for the protocols and the people working in the cabinet office.
But we are told that these phones, the WhatsApp messages, are not backed up from government phones because of the risk of a third-party server. That's what people keep saying to me. I find it unbelievable, but...
Well, if you didn't have the phone out and you have all the security protections on it, then you wouldn't have this problem. And certainly people should be able to get those WhatsApp messages back. They should have been able to lock the device instantly and secure the information.
Well, you say instantly. I mean, this is one of the issues, isn't it? Your phone is stolen. He said he's in the police report, Morgan McSweeney says he chased the man on the bike up the road. He chases him along. That's going to take a couple of minutes. So you think, right, I need to call work. So you then call work and tell them. By the time you've got through on the switchboard, you could easily have lost 2 or 3 minutes. So at that point, if it was just some bloke on a bike, who just stole the phone and it's now going off to be sold somewhere in Asia, that's one thing. If it was some sort of foreign funded hostile state were behind this theft, it's always a possibility. They could have wiped that phone. They could have taken all the information off it within a minute.
Well, that's that is possible, but I think that's a little bit unlikely. I can't see Morgan McSweeney necessarily being targeted. Now, the other thing I would say there is that when you are dealing with somebody who's just nicked it because they want to sell it on, probably the first thing they're not looking at is WhatsApp. What they are looking there is to see in the wallet, to see if there are any information there about your financial details, and can they instantly or as quickly as possible get to your settings and change your password. And if you have two-factor authentication on that password change, then there should be a security mechanism in place.
We're going into the nitty-gritty details, but look, a lot of people are saying they are important. But again, the nitty-gritty details also don't all tally. What Morgan McSweeney told the police, what he's told what's gone into the public domain, even down to it was a balaclava. All everyone was saying is a balaclava-clad bike thief. No mention of a balaclava at any point, despite quite a detailed description given to the police in that phone call and that we got the transcript from. I would have thought that was the sort of fact you would absolutely mention, and he didn't. None of this is smelling good. Carl Turner, Labour MP, is not shy of being critical of this government. He said categorically on X, I don't believe McSwindle, obviously meaning Morgan McSweeney, had his phone stolen. Simple as that. He simply doesn't believe it.
Well, he's got his certain issues with the government. He's got them over jury trials, I believe. So he's an acute watcher of the scene. He's got an axe to grind. I think really what we should be looking at here is, can we get to some real facts? And at the bottom of this is, what were those WhatsApp messages and those emails between Morgan McSweeney and Peter Mandelson? That is the absolute core.
And this is where it really matters, whether there has been a cover-up or not. A, was the phone stolen? B, has there been a cover-up? What was the purpose of it all? But here's the crucial thing. This all comes down to the terrible misjudgment of the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff and others in basically pushing the appointment of Lord Mandelson when we knew what we already knew about him, and that was bad enough for him not to be appointed. And the fact that what has come out since, and again, police investigation, he's said denied any wrongdoing, what has come out since in the Epstein files would suggest that he was a massive, if these files were true, a massive security risk in terms of the ability for him to be blackmailed, etc. So we are looking at a proper scandal. Do you think this is Watergate-style level of scandal?
I don't think it's quite that far. We haven't sent people in to burgle things. What we have got is a massive failure of judgment. I mean, you mentioned a moment ago the fact that we knew a lot about Lord Mandelson and his associations with Epstein. That was written up in quite graphic detail in the Financial Times by Jim Pickard, a great piece of journalism. The other thing that we've got to bear in mind here is that actually knowing all of that, with the greatest deference to people who succeeded me in the comms world in number 10, I cannot imagine John Major sending me off to go and talk to somebody like a lord that you're about to make a serious appointment to, and, hey, Jonathan, go and ask him if there's any skeletons in the cupboard. That just simply is poor process. It's unbelievable that we could get into that situation. And there is something more to be told about the speed, as Jonathan Powell has said, and the way in which that appointment was made that really does beg questions of political judgment, but also the effectiveness, as I think Philip has perhaps mentioned, you've mentioned certainly, the effectiveness of the Cabinet Office and the vetting machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's simply not good enough.
Well, no, again, the key thing is, why on earth did Mandelson put up with not being spoken to by the Prime Minister, given what an absolutely vital role this was? Jonathan Haslam, former Director of Communications under John Major, was here when he was at number 10. Philip, I guess he's saying, look, we cock up rather conspiracies, and I've always said that. But in this case, it just doesn't feel that way.
Well, it cock up in the way it's been handled to start with, rather than conspiracy. I don't think the government designed this, but the way they're handling it is actually shockingly bad and is undermining everything that's in place. I've just found using non-corporate communications channels, e.g. WhatsApp, private email, SMS for government business, a Cabinet Office protocol, guidance protocol from March 2023, and it requires anything that is significant government information that could materially be involved in the direction of a piece of work, i.e. the selection of our ambassador to the United States, to be backed up and to be screenshotted and to be given to official records. Everything with this shows that what is happening inside number 10, what's happening inside the Cabinet Office, is they're running roughshod with every process and procedure.
Well, as we saw under the Tories, when they basically, kids were put in masks and banned from going to school for long periods of time because of little WhatsApp chats that Matt Hancock was in. I mean, this thing, by the way, just some other breaking news. Donald Trump, he's being busy early hours of this morning on Truth Social. Gets up early, doesn't he? In the last few moments, he has written on his Truth Social website, the Iranian negotiators are very different and strange, inverted commas. He says they are begging us to make a deal, which they should be doing since they've come They have been militarily obliterated with zero chance of a comeback, and yet they publicly state they are only looking at our proposal. Wrong, he says in capital letters. They better get serious soon before it is too late, because once that happens, there is no turning back, and it won't be pretty. This is signed by the president. He's making a lot of threats. We've seen over the last 24 hours to the Iranians. They're still denying there were any proper talk. He vowed to unleash hell if they didn't agree to this peace deal. So what the hell do you think is going on there?
Donald Trump is setting the conditions to get back to attacking Iranian targets. The attack will either happen on Friday evening or Saturday. There we go.
There you go. You've heard it here first. When it all happens, you go, I heard that from Philip Ingham. We're going to take a quick break, and up next we are going to be talking about the new BBC Director General. Is the new boss Matt Britton? Is he the man who's going to turn it all around and change everything? We'll talk to a former senior BBC executive, Jamie Angus, about that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, getting to more of your calls about, well, anything you want to talk about, of course, but the theft of Morgan McSweeney's phone. We'll get back to that and plenty more besides coming up very soon. Right now, though, let's talk about the BBC. They've got a brand new boss finally taking over. The new Director General is Matt Britton. He's a former boss at Google. He's also, of course, someone who used to be on the board of the Guardian newspaper. So no surprise there. But is he going to be the man to turn around the BBC's fortunes and, as he said, win back the public's trust? Well, let's talk to Jamie Angus, former senior BBC executive, also a trustee of the Henry Jackson Society. Good morning to you, Jamie.
Good morning.
Is this the man to do the job?
Well, I think when we talked about this once before, we were saying that if you take the view that the BBC is becoming a digital broadcast, a digital organisation that also does a little bit of broadcasting rather than the other way around, then it does look like a really smart appointment. There's no question that more and more audiences are going to consume the BBC's content in digital form, whether that's on iPlayer or on third-party platforms like Google and YouTube, which is, of course, where Matt Britton comes from. And the question of how you get that content to audiences in the digital era is going to be an incredibly important question for the BBC over the next 10 years.
So in terms of the direction of the BBC and the development, people moving on to watching stuff on YouTube or on their iPads rather than, watching, linear television like, I certainly grew up doing, and I know, no one under 30 seems to do. No one under 30 seems to do anymore. Sorry. Got a bit of can you hear me? You can hear me. Oh, good, you can hear me. But see, he's got that tech savvy knowledge, which is going to be absolutely vital. But does he understand the politics of the job?
Well, that's the question, and they have to put a structure in to support Matt, I think, to make sure that he's getting really strong and accurate editorial advice from people with a lifetime of experience, because of course it's so often the case. Well, in almost every case, the really big scandals that touch the BBC come out of the news department, because everything that BBC News does tends to be more controversial and part of the kind of modern culture wars environment. So it's really, really important that Matt has a structure of people around him who can, help him see the pitfalls coming along the road. And I'm sure that's what he's going to do. There's some discussion that he's going to appoint a Deputy Director General who would be somebody from a much more experienced news background that would really be able to help him and advise him in that kind of task.
Although you could argue that actually there's a lot of people who've been working at the BBC for a very long time who kind of got the BBC into the mess it's in by living in this sort of this BBC woke bubble where, where everyone voted to remain and everyone thinks that, the colonial history of the BBC, of the British Empire is terrible and that racism is rife and everyone should welcome trans people, even at the expense of women's rights. I mean, this is kind of got what got the BBC into its problems in the first place, isn't it?
Well, even as you rattle off that list, Julia, it just goes to show the BBC inevitably gets dragged into whatever are the kind of big culture wars issues of the day. That's just inevitable.
No,
Anyone
I don't think
runs
that's true.
needs to accept
the BBC
right?
hasn't been dragged into any of them. The BBC has chosen to push those culture wars. That's the issue for a lot of viewers who are turning off in their droves and refusing to pay their licence fees.
But I think particularly BBC News just doesn't really have a choice, right? It has to cover these really, really difficult, profound cultural and political questions that are at the centre of people's lives, and also on which the country itself is profoundly divided.
Again,
so there's no way that
I disagree
BBC
with
News,
you.
for example,
Climate change propaganda being pushed in every single climate change propaganda pushed in every single show. When they interview a mum about going to a food bank, it's a trans-identified man. They pushing drag queen stuff on children in story times and CBBC. I mean, they have chosen to pick up weapons in these battles. They are the perpetrators in the culture war rather than reporting on it. That's why people don't like the BBC anymore.
Well, some people do and some people don't. And I think one of the problems is the fact that people are forced to pay for the BBC. I think that all of this stems from the fact that the obligation around the licence fee, the fact that people are forced to pay for it, means that people then feel particularly passionately and also, frankly, resentful when they feel that the BBC doesn't represent their interests. That is a huge issue for the BBC. And as they go into the next licence fee settlement period, I think finding some ways in which that sense of obligation, that sense of you being forced to pay for something you don't agree with, I think resolving that issue in particular is going to be one of Matt's biggest challenges.
I mean, there is an issue in terms of, he's got this, this massive job at Google. He's obviously going to be highly intelligent, highly competent. The fact, we know that Google, a lot of these organisations completely sort of, woke, very controlling, by the way, about, what could be said during lockdown or about trans and things like that and over recent years. And these Google searches, for goodness sake. I mean, just completely and utterly politically skewed. And then we find out, he was a non-executive board member at the Guardian newspaper. Look, I mean, come on, you can't get a job anywhere close to the Guardian. I used to work there, unless you can, you can have the right credentials, to appear to have the same views as the majority of the Guardian staff there. We already know the point he comes from. That's going to be a problem, isn't it?
I mean, I don't think so, and I think you should judge him by what he does in the office. I like the guy starts in 2 weeks' time, so let's see how it goes and how the decisions he takes. But I go back to my point that I was making just now: is that I don't think you can really judge a Director General by their individual position on any of these specific editorial issues. His challenge is much, much greater if you believe that the BBC should exist. And I suspect that most people watching, probably the majority of people watching and listening to us, broadly think that it should exist, even if they have some significant criticisms of the way that it's run. If you think that the BBC should exist and the country benefits from having a public broadcaster that does the things that the market can't do, that brings people together around the kind of big national moments. If you believe in that, then setting out a future where that's secure for the next 10 years and a way of paying for it that doesn't generate resentment is a really, really important job for him.
We shall see if that works out that way. Jamie Angus, great to talk to you, former senior BBC executive. Apologies for talking about that. You could hear I had some problems with my earpiece there. Apologies for that. Philip Ingram, look, just this week we've had that Channel 5 docudrama about Hugh Edwards, by the way, starring Martin Clunes. So worth watching. I was watching that last night. It's absolutely brilliant. And if you didn't think, as apparently Martin Clunes didn't think, it was that, it wasn't that awful. It was a bit of a witch hunt against this, this absolute national treasure. No, I mean, the grooming that went on, absolutely horrible piece of work. And a lot of people on the front page of the Sun saying, why the hell is this guy not in prison? Asking that. Do you think the BBC can escape all of that?
I don't think it can escape it without some massive reform. And the BBC needs to reform. But it needs to change. Society is changing. The way we consume our media is changing. And BBC have let themselves down with everything that they're doing.
And they're not following a news agenda. They're trying to set the news agenda. I can't watch a wildlife documentary on the BBC anymore. Oh, God, I'm going to get the lecture about the absolute made-up stuff about how the world's coming to an end.
They are influencing, not informing, and that's dangerous.
Absolutely, and they're doing it from only one perspective, and that's not their job, and they wonder why people don't want to pay for them anymore, whether it's through tax or the licence fee. So much more coming up. Love to hear your thoughts on the BBC on any of the topics we are talking about, in particular about that theft of that mobile phone of Morgan Sweeney. Do you believe it was stolen? We're going to talk to an MP who says he doesn't think it was. This is
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
welcome back to the show. It's approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. If you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, if you're watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for joining us. Lots to talk about. Don't forget, if you've missed anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Cannot wait to get your calls and your thoughts on all of the big topics today. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we are going to be talking to a Labour MP who says that he simply doesn't believe that the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, who, when he was Chief of Staff to Keir Starmer, had his mobile phone stolen. Certainly, an awful lot of the versions of events we've been given simply do not tally and do not add up. And the Prime Minister's insistence there was no reason for anyone to try and, orchestrate a conspiracy here. Well, except there really, really was. And we'll get into the detail of that in just a couple of moments. We're also going to be talking about developments over the war between the US and Iran. Quite a few posts on the True Social site from Donald Trump this morning. He's not woken up on the right side of the bed this morning when it comes to the Iranians, that's for sure. Also, talking about Keir Starmer, who's on a trip to Finland this morning, and he said that Britain is facing a war on two fronts. And certainly we've seen the economic fallout of the Iran war with the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, that's the OECD, you'll have heard about them a lot. They said that Britain faces a bigger economic downgrade as a result of the war in the Persian Gulf than any other major country. I bet you can't guess why that is. Hi, Ed Miliband. Hello, how are you? Also going to be talking about Nottingham police and how they were too worried about being called racist to catch dangerous criminals like Valdo Calacane, who, of course, was a terrible, terrible threat. And as we saw, took the lives of 3 people a couple of years ago. There's an ongoing inquiry into that. We'll talk to a police expert on that. Coming up right now, though, let's talk about Morgan McSweeney and that missing mobile phone with my guest joining me in the studio throughout the show. And he, of course, is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Morning to you once again.
Morning again.
Someone who, of course, knows quite a lot about the small matter of, mobile phone security and what can be traced and what can be kept and etc., etc. Look, we discussed this quite a lot in the last hour, but it is worth getting back to. We've got basically a revelation in the last week or so that the Prime Minister's resigned since earlier this year, former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, that he had his mobile phone stolen. It was a government phone, and we would claim that the police didn't look into it, and, that was the end of the matter. Nothing to see here, because it was all rather convenient that, of course, the government is now having to provide all of the messages that were, or discussion of, and messages to and from Peter Mandelson around his appointment as our ambassador to the United States back in 2024. Now, no conspiracy here, and as the Prime Minister himself has said very clearly yesterday, the idea that somehow everybody could have seen that sometime in the future there'd be a request for the phone is, to my mind, a little bit far-fetched. The trouble with that claim from the Prime Minister is that, well, at the time, in the 2 weeks before the phone was reported stolen, there was absolutely discussion, reported, by the way, in the media before we knew Morgan McSweeney's phone had been stolen. There had been discussion about, one advisor of the Labour Party in the government saying that Morgan McSweeney would be, in his word, I can't say the actual word, effed, if he had to hand over all his messages to and about Mandelson. Now, mysteriously, the phone goes missing. We had a report of the theft. We were told that the Met Police didn't investigate. The Met Police released a transcript yesterday of the phone call that McSweeney made. McSweeney not only gave the wrong address, he gave the wrong street. When asked for prompts about other streets nearby, did not correct the call handler. He did not say who he was. He gave his name, date of birth, but he did not say, I'm the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, it's a government phone and it's going to have massively important security stuff on it. That would have prompted a very quick response from the Met Police. You would have expected. It certainly has in the past in similar cases. He did say that he had contacted his employer, so Number 10 Security would have been able to wipe the phone and give it. Made no effort whatsoever, apparently, neither Number 10 nor Morgan McSweeney, to follow up this report to the police the next day, despite 2 calls from the Met Police to his private mobile phone to try and follow this up during working hours. The phone could have been found using Find My Phone for up to 24 hours, but apparently that wasn't attempted. As my good quality guest, he knows his stuff, Philip Ingram has pointed out, GCHQ would be able to track a phone like that for much longer than that. No effort was made to do that. Crucially, not only did Morgan McSweeney give the wrong address, give a street which was actually in Stepney in East London, when in fact he was in Pimlico, by getting street and road mixed up rather conveniently. He also, we are told, he's told the police that he was a balaclava-clad a man on a bike who stole his phone. Except in the police report he made, no mention of balaclava whatsoever. He said he was a young black guy. He didn't. I remember thinking at the time when I read the transcript yesterday, well, that's weird, because how would you have known what colour he is? I mean, OK, maybe you saw his hand, or, you know, you saw more of his face. The balaclava didn't hide his whole face. No, the word balaclava, despite being in all the reports from the last week, makes no mention whatsoever in the police call transcript. None of this adds up. None of this adds up. We're going to talk to an MP, Carl Turner, in the next hour, who says he simply does not believe that his phone was stolen at all. But Philip Ingram, this isn't about some bloke no one had heard of a year ago having his phone stolen. Tell us why this does matter.
This does matter because Morgan McSweeney, as the Chief of Staff of the Prime Minister, will have just about every a sensitive phone number, people's personal phone numbers that are not publicly out there for across government and internationally. He will have conversations going on. He will have emails and things that, from a collective perspective, will be very sensitive indeed. They may not be classified classically as something, but you put it all together, and this is a real manna from heaven source of information.
To a hostile state. And we have a number of those at the moment who we know are engaged in spying on this country. Iran, China,
Correct.
Russia.
And actively doing it. And therefore, what would have had to have happened in this is, put the police investigation on one side, you know, the number 10 security advisor would have had to carry out a risk assessment as to what the potential risk was, and would have taken this into account. They'll have gone, oh, and I can't say the word, it begins with S and is smelly, and then would have got had to taken advice from the security service. Security service would have turned around and said, right, yes, we can sit and look and track track this. They'll have contacted the National Cyber Security Centre and GCHQ. GCHQ will have used the warrants that they have in place to go to the cell phone towers and the mobile phone company, and they'll have been able to track exactly with this little phone and this little man and his bicycle.
They wouldn't bother for you and me, but they would absolutely...
Oh, you need to do a risk assessment. You need to know where this phone has gone, if there's a possibility that someone could have gone in and copied everything that was on it.
And again, we told that the phone had been wiped. He can remotely wipe it, remotely shut it down. But
what was the delta?
He said to the police that he'd run up the road, he'd chased this guy who'd stolen his phone, with or without a balaclava on. That would be in a couple of minutes. You then go, right, I need to call my boss, and then so there easily enough time. Again, in all likelihood, again, if the phone was stolen, that the phone was stolen by someone who's just, you know, part of the organised criminals who steal phones and then sell them en masse, and the police do nothing about any of it for years on end, and then the problem grows and grows. I don't want them just investigating the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. But that's the thing, it's not just a phone. But people, I mean, we spoke to someone earlier saying, well, I doubt very much they would target him. Given that government ministers have security, they're often in their ministerial cars, things like, I would have thought he's exactly the sort of person you would target, because he won't have security.
Correct.
And he would be an easy target, easy person to track.
100%.
And exactly the sort of person that could be. So there would certainly be a concern that phone could have been grabbed, taken round the corner and wiped, and the information taken from it before it was wiped.
Exactly. And the other thing, if you've got a phone thief, he's likely to have stolen a number of other phones. They're going to be in his bag that's with him. He probably hasn't switched them off. So if you are tracking the phone through the cell towers, and you get GCHQ to have a look at it, you speak to the mobile phone companies, they're going to be able to go, oh, by the way, following that exact same route at the other time, there's another 5 phones doing exactly the same thing. So you can then turn around and go, it is a phone thief. Right, we can step back a little bit. If it's not, and it's by itself and going off, you're going, this is slightly more suspicious. We need to drill into this further, because phone thieves tend to go for more than just one person.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, again,
there's so much just doesn't add up.
Unless all of this was done and we're just not being told about it.
Well, then it would be so easy for the government to turn around and say, we did all of this.
Every investigation was done.
And for the Met Police to turn around and say, yes, we weren't involved because the security service took the lead. And
number 10 have not, as far as I'm aware, yet they've done it since I've been on air, haven't actually confirmed that the security team even contacted the Met Police. Met Police say no one was in contact with them after this point.
I'm sorry, that's basic stuff.
But it would be absolutely the norm for them to do so. Look, do you think this smells so fishy that something else is going on?
Yes.
So whether or not it was just a phone thief having a go opportunistically, whether or not it was stolen by, high levels, cyber espionage or something from a foreign country, or that no phone was stolen whatsoever. It's just been...
Well, I don't care whether the phone was stolen or not. There's excuses, but it smells so bad, and there's a cock up. It's more than just that.
But the Prime Minister, again, the Prime Minister said very, very clearly, he said the idea that somehow everybody could have seen that sometime in the future there'd be a request for the phone is, to my mind, a little bit far-fetched.
But they'd seen it 2 weeks beforehand.
Except he would say it's on record and it's been printed before we knew that Morgan McSweeney's phone had been stolen, that they were discussing. And again, the reason they were discussing is way back in September, before this, almost a month before this phone was stolen, reported stolen. I'm going to clarify that. That there was discussion about that the Tories were going to table what's called this humble address, and that you put a vote into Parliament. And remember, we had loads of Labour MPs so angry with Keir Starmer for having appointed Mandelson and ignored the clear advice, you shouldn't have had this guy as our ambassador to the United States, that they voted with the Tories and basically forced the government to hand over everything. Now, in the next week, conveniently during recess before Easter, we are expecting to see the second tranche of information coming out. We've already seen quite a lot. Now, some of that would involve messages from this man. Now, bearing in mind, everyone's had to hand over everything, and we know that a lot of it is just embarrassing stuff. It'll be basically, look, realistically, would you like your boss to be able to see the messages that you've written about him or her at some point on a cross Monday
morning?
The
COVID inquiry spent months discussing what Boris had done in exactly the same way.
So, that's what I'm saying.
And they were baying for it.
We know this is what's going. There's going to be a lot of this stuff. He said it's going to be stuff. I think a lot of stuff criticising their own boss,
of course,
and how useless Keir Starmer is. But how convenient this phone goes missing. But there's no reason this phone going missing should actually mean we don't see these messages.
Correct. No, they can get all the messages back. And your top tip for people after the local government elections, when Keir Starmer gets sacked, if you ever need a barrister, don't go to him. He's never across his brief. He's not across the detail. He's not very good.
I'm genuine. As I've said before, if he was my barrister, I'd say it's all right. I'll handle this myself. I'll do my own defence. Look, there's lots more to talk about as well. Small matter of the war in Iran. Prime Minister, keeps. I mean, PM Kesey was very keen to say attacking Nigel Farage, attacking Kemi Badenoch. Oh, you both U-turn. You wanted to get involved in this war. I made the right decision not to be involved in the war. He didn't make a decision to not be involved in the war. He just sat on the fence long enough that it kind of happened without him.
He lied to us. We were involved.
Well, you said before we were, but it's interesting that Donald Trump keeps insisting he's having these talks with the Iranians. The Iranians keep going, no, you're not. There's some messages going via Pakistan. That's it. Donald Trump has vowed to unleash hell after Iran rejected the latest peace deal offering. Today, this morning, and he's been quite busy on Truth Social. He's been typing away. He says NATO nations have done absolutely nothing to help with the lunatic nation, now military decimated, of Iran. The USA needs nothing from NATO, but never forget this very important point in time. He's also, in the last half hour, written that the Iranian negotiators are very different and strange. They are begging us to make a deal, which they should be doing since they've been militarily obliterated with zero chance of a comeback, and yet they publicly state they are only looking at our proposal. Wrong, he says. A lot of capital letters and exclamation marks. They better get serious soon before it is too late, because once that happens, there is no turning back, and it won't be pretty. A lot of this being ramped up. What is your expectation of what's going to happen?
Friday night or sometime on Saturday, the United States is going to start bombing Iran again, and there's a possibility that they're going to carry out air-landed operations prior to maritime operations to capture some of the islands in and around the Strait of Hormuz.
So this Karg Island we've heard so much about. It's where 90% of the Iranian exports of oil go.
The Karg Island is in the Red Sea. The Americans could capture it using the elements of 82nd Airborne. Sustaining that would be very difficult. But if you capture it, you can't do anything with the oil until you've secured the Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
The Strait of Hormuz is the political the hot potato. There are 3 islands that the Iranians have got their defences on in the Strait of Hormuz, that they launched their fast attack craft from, they launched their anti-ship missiles from, they launched their mine-laying vessels from. Those have to be secured before you can secure the Strait of Hormuz using naval forces if you're going to reduce and mitigate the risks that there are. That has to happen. That's the number one priority. The 2 could happen sequenced in a way, but that's the
But again, this is, again, the American public do not want boots on the ground.
No, they don't want boots on the ground. But Donald Trump could try and sell it as it's limited. We're going to an island. The island is X number of kilometres offshore.
You often don't have a decision. You don't get to be the only person deciding whether it's limited or not, though. If the Iranians...
You don't. The enemy...
We're not talking about Iraq, where the army literally laid down their arms, took their uniforms off and walked away. Iran has incredibly powerful... 650,000 in terms of military and police, including the IRGC. They very highly motivated, very well paid, and very ideological.
I've planned and executed some very, very sophisticated and complex operations, and the one thing that's consistent between them is the opposition tend not to follow your plan, and they tend to have a vote, and it doesn't necessarily go the way that you've anticipated.
This is the concern. Well, we also know the massive economic impact of this war, and the OECD they've forecast that 2026 our GDP is going to basically go down, cut by 0.5 percentage point. That's a lot of billions, guys. We're going to have basically the weakest growth in the developed world this year. We're facing a bigger economic downgrade as a result of the war in the Gulf than any other major country. It's largely because of high energy prices, which basically tax our living standards. And we're, guess what, an energy importer, not an exporter, so we get hit by it more. But you know what the answer is if you talk to Ed Miliband? We go to more renewables.
More renewables. Whenever actually we've got energy to export, if we started drill, baby, drill.
Don't. It's so bad. I'm genuinely, I'm just...
I knew that would wind you up.
I struggle so much for that. Keir Starmer at PMQs yesterday, absurd line of answers to the questions from Kemi Badenoch about net zero and, the need, the economic and defence imperative of abandoning this ridiculous ban on new licences for the North Sea. And he kept saying 3 times, but she must know, that the actual, quasi-judicial role for deciding on licences is held by the Secretary of State, basically meaning Ed Miliband. He's a Prime Minister saying, I don't have any say over this. This is up to the Cabinet Minister that I appoint to make that decision. I mean...
I can sack him.
It was genuinely the most bizarre, lawyerly nonsense I've heard in a very, very long time. I mean, and you can see even his Labour backbenchers were sitting there going, what the hell are you talking about?
But this is a common excuse that's used across Whitehall. I remember just over a year ago talking to two defence chiefs about things that were going on in their area. And as I was leaving, I said, why are you not sorting this out? And they said, Philip, that decision is above my pay grade. And I looked at them and went, you're the chief. You're the person at the top of this organisation. Yeah. And I could see them suddenly going, oh my goodness, I can't use that excuse. I've nowhere else to go. It's
not going to fly.
And they then sort of pushed me out of their office.
Yeah, I mean, really doesn't fly at all, does it? Look, let's also talk about this extraordinary case in the United States. 40 hours of deliberation by a jury in California to decide that YouTube, owned by Google, and Instagram, owned by Meta, had actually basically liability for a woman's mental health when she was a child over their, basically, the social media addiction. They've been ordered to pay her $3 million in damages, and about the same actually in costs as well. Lots of people are saying that this is, just the start of a deluge of cases, many of which are going to be group cases, which could cost billions in total to these big companies. It's the first of its kind lawsuit. It's a 20-year-old woman, referred only to by the name Kaylee. She claims that she started using YouTube at the age of 6. She downloaded the app on her iPod Touch. She watched videos. Playing games. She joined Instagram at the age of 9, getting around a block by her mother. You're not allowed to join Instagram to the age of 13. And bearing in mind, this was 10 plus years ago. She spent hours and hours every day on these sites, watching videos, posting videos herself, while at primary school, I'd like to point out, and claims it's had a massive impact on her mental health and depression. Now, as you and I were discussing earlier, first thing I thought when I thought of this, we're not talking about a 14-year-old or a 16-year-old able to lie to the parents and hide. If you're 6 and you're 9 and you're spending all day, every day sitting on these sites, that's a parenting fail. I don't know why. Again, I think these sites are addictive, and I think they should be held liable for that. We need to get these algorithms changed. We need to have some of this changed. And I think massive limitations on what children can access. But fundamentally, this is abject failure by parents to do their job, to look after their child. If you are using your child's phone, by the way, your child shouldn't have a phone or a tablet at that age. I'm sorry, they shouldn't. And I'm not a Luddite. I'm just saying the evidence is so clear. Give your kid a book and talk to your child and play with them outside. If your child is basically being babysat by technology so that you can carry on watching telly or sitting on your phone on social media as well, you are not a good parent. I'm going to go, you're a bad parent. You're not doing a good job. Your child's mental health is your responsibility, not Instagram's.
Yeah, but and how many 6-year-olds know that they spent 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, 9 hours on something? They don't. They've got no concept of time. So I can see why the jury will have spent 40 hours debating it. I'm surprised they came up with the conclusion that they did. And therefore, I agree with you. I think the parent should be arrested first and foremost, and then she should be sanctioned now that she's an adult if she believes that. But she says bypassing legal rules.
Her near constant social media, she says, really affected my self-worth. The apps led her to abandon hobbies, struggle to make friends, and measure herself against others. But hey, Mum, hey, Dad, well, where were you?
Yeah.
Where were you when your kid? What do you mean your kid stopped wanting to do anything and sat on her phone? Where were you going? No, we're getting rid of the phone and you're going back to go and play baseball or whatever you do.
Was Keir Starmer's Google and YouTube's barrister trying to protect them?
Yeah, I mean, but again, we've got personal responsibility still matters. It really bothers me.
Responsibility is important.
What do you make of we've got that BMA resident doctors strike over Easter? Yet again, I mean, lost count. Interestingly, when we actually got those strikes in place, it's amazing how little time they actually spent on the front page. There was a time when these were front page. And people just got used to them. People are used to long delays. They're not impacting the way they used to because hospitals are learning to work around them, but also because actually not all the doctors are members of the BMA. Not all BMA doctors are actually joining in the strikes, which I think is a bit of a giveaway.
Yeah, well, a junior doctor, first year, having newly qualified, £38,831 before they get weekend allowances and overtime.
Sorry, I think they're underpaid.
And all the rest of it. I agree that they're underpaid, but that's you straight out of university. That's you qualified. That's you without any actual practical experience.
Straight out of university, after 7 years of university. Yeah. And come on. I'm sorry, these are highly skilled, highly trained people. So they're on half of what a tube driver gets, for God's sake. 2 weeks to train to be a tube driver.
In comparison, but in the second year it's up to almost 45,000, and then after that, when they start the specialist training, you're 50.
Yeah, but what's your point?
57,000.
These are highly skilled. They've got 3 straight AA levels. They've gone to university. They've got the competition to get into university to do medicine. Well, if you're not a foreign student, you're able to pay 3 times as much as the fees. Is immense. These are top of their game. They've had to work incredibly hard. I'm not just saying this because I'm a doctor's daughter. Generally, I think we should be paying these people a good rate of pay. I've got no issue with it, but I don't think they should be going on strike to ask for another 26%.
Therefore, that's exactly what I was saying. They should not be allowed to go on strike. They've already had 30% increase. They're asking
that was over a number of years.
2 years, I think. They've asked for another 26%. They've refused anything that's going in, and it's a very small number that have gone militant. And in this latest
action,
the problem. In this latest action, they've linked it to the war in Iran as well. Yeah. So it's nothing to do with them.
Yeah. I can't even work out what that link is. It's costly bizarre. But this is a militant union.
The BMA has gone from being a professional body looking after doctors from a professional standards perspective to being a militant union, and it needs to stop.
What did you also make of? There's a report at the BBC. They found that 70,000 children under the age of 18 are being prescribed antidepressants each year. Often they are getting them against official NHS protocol. They're getting them from their GP rather than being sent to see a psychiatrist or wait to see a psychiatrist. Often you can wait years now. Again, that's unacceptable. And B, GPs being able to prescribe. Often they say they feel they've got no choice. They're desperate. My personal experience from friends I've spoken to with children is actually that they, in fact, an adult as well, the GPs are far too quick to prescribe antidepressants. I had a friend whose daughter was advised maybe you should get antidepressants when she had absolutely no depression whatsoever, but for another issue involving some other medication. And it was the mother made a formal complaint. It was absolutely outraged. This had even been suggested to her child. and annoyingly will not let me talk about it in any more detail on air. But I mean, an absolutely outrageous thing. I think the problem is not, oh, you poor doctors, what can you do? You know, you not get. You know, I think it's doctors are just going, yeah, great, have some antidepressants. Ritalin for the ADHD kids, this, and they're just putting these kids on. You are more likely to die than come off antidepressants. Yeah, you're basically on them for life. These are very dangerous drugs, and by the way, in most cases, not proven to actually help people.
Well,
the evidence is very, very questionable.
It depends on the type of depression.
It does. I know you've suffered from it.
And I've been on antidepressants, and mine was caused by a chemical imbalance that was in my brain, and what the antidepressants did was they helped correct that, and then I came off them. And
that's a very different, but that's not always what the case is.
It isn't, and the doctors and GPs in particular are too quick to hand out the sweeties because it gets them away. But again, that's symptomatic of the pressure that there is on the GPs, because of everything that's going on, and because they can't refer people into the junior doctors who are going on strike because they're being unreasonable. The lack of funding that there is in different parts of the NHS, but it's not necessarily lack of funding. It's the poor management that's in there.
I just don't accept that GPs are under all this pressure. I just simply don't. You're just doing the job. If you don't want to do the job, I think they should be well paid, and they largely are
well
really well paid. I simply do not accept. They're all under so much pressure. They're working a 4-day week. Give me a break.
They're providing a private practice to the NHS because they're all under contract. They're not employed. Anyway,
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call on all the topics we're talking about. I know a lot of you getting in touch. We'll get your calls up next about Morgan McSweeney and the mystery of this phone being stolen. Or was it? 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royal tea from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the Royal Tea from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Not a surprise, both of them are about Morgan McSweeney's phone theft. Carl is in Liverpool. Carl, what do you make of the story?
Good morning, Julia.
Morning.
Yeah, well, I think we all know it's a lie. I think that phone's destroyed because you said something earlier, Julia, about one of the Labour MPs saying if that phone's looked at, Mandelson's message exchange to Morgan McSweeney, he's effed. So I think that phone has been destroyed, and I think this whole lie is being concocted up with the Prime Minister knowing as well. And the longer it goes on, the worse it looks for him, because whatever happens in government, whether it's Rachel Reeves, Ed Miliband, they all fall under the PM's mandate, his power. They all work for him.
Yeah.
And everything falls at this man's doorstep, and it's just another nail in his coffin, because it wouldn't be so bad if the man had been great when he come in and did everything that he said he was
yeah,
gonna
exactly.
do.
I might forgive it. But this is the thing, it's just the general level of incompetence, the lack of security, the poor judgment. I mean, again, I think it's really important to understand what's been emerging in the Jeffrey Epstein files, what a massive security risk that Mandelson was. And yet that appointment was made, apparently, at Morgan McSweeney's behest, because he was his mentor.
Yeah, the whole thing does fall with Keir Starmer at the end of the day, and as long as this goes on, he looks even worse on this stage.
Do you think that this could actually be part of the reason why, Keir Starmer gets ousted?
I think so. But this is the thing, Julie. Somewhere down the line there'll be a whistleblower.
Yeah.
Someone will come out and say the phone was destroyed or this and that. The Prime Minister knew this, because the country's getting fed up now. The guy's just lied on every level. He's lied on the world stage. He's lied to the British people. If he continues lying, his job is gone. But in the meantime, he just needs to come out and be truthful.
he said, in his statements, he said, the phone was stolen, it was reported to the police. There's a transcript of the call in which Morgan McSweeney gives the name, date of birth, the details of the phone, and the police confirmed that it was reported. It was reported at the time. And he keeps saying about the police have acknowledged and confirmed that this is what happened. They've acknowledged and confirmed that a phone call was made to them reporting that a phone was stolen.
Yeah, he didn't tell them who we worked for or the priority that should go into dealing with this issue. So he's lied, and this is the thing. You said that yourself, the balaclava thing wasn't mentioned. These are things that people will pick up on because it's out there. So people will say, well, you said this, but then it's not being said again. Yeah,
I just think it's really... It was this morning I suddenly went, oh, hold on a minute. When I read the transcript yesterday, I don't think the word balaclava was mentioned. It's a really weird thing to have forgotten to mention. That's kind of like the number one thing. It was a guy on a bike wearing a balaclava because someone in a balaclava is scary. One of the reasons I don't like seeing people with masks and hoods wandering around on a perfectly sunny day is because I think, by definition, they're going to be a risk to me. Carl, thank you for that. You're taking no prisoners on that front, are you? Marion is in Norfolk. Marion, what do you want to say?
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Before we start, can I just say you are the Boudica of live talk.
Get me. Thanking you.
You are. I see you with a spear and a chariot.
Anyway, this has been mocked up on Grok. Can I point out, I'm of an age where it's Boadicea. When did it become Boudica?
Yes,
when did that happen?
Boudica, I don't know, but whoever the name was, if she was real and what she did was amazing for a woman, she's a bit of a hero for me.
Oh, bless you. I'm very, very touched. Thank you. Let's talk about the government.
The Mandelson phone saga is a load of codswallop, but I'll tell you why. I'm 80 years old. Yeah. I Googled, good old Google, government phones, right? It's a little snippet of information. MDM Tools, mobile device management, allows automated backups and security wipes of these government phones. These measures ensure compliance with strict data security standards and allow for recovery of official information. You don't even need the lost phone, the stolen phone, because they actually have it all there. When you buy a new phone, you can back up your phone with all this saved data.
We've all done it, but apparently it's not backed. WhatsApps and things aren't backed up on government phones. That's what we've been told. But I just simply don't believe that for a moment. As I said, what Philip Ingram, who's an expert on this stuff, says that's not the case.
I'm so insulted by this dog ate my homework excuse. Because they think we're absolutely stupid. So the last question is there anyone in this government with any moral backbone to stop covering up and protecting wrongdoers. I don't get it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on all of that, man. Thank you so much for your call. Going to take a very quick break. Then we're going to be back with Jake Wallace-Simons to talk about what on earth is going on in the Iran war. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. Let's talk about what is going on in Iran right now with the author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself, international foreign correspondent, Jake Wallace-Simons. A very good morning to you, Jake.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, we talked to you about a lot of world affairs, obviously a lot focusing on what's been going on with Israel over recent years as well. But, I mean, the focus on Iran right now seems to be completely centred on, is there a deal? Isn't there a deal? Are there peace talks? Aren't there peace talks? We've had two particular posts from Donald Trump on Truth Social this morning talking about how the Iranian negotiators are begging us to make a deal, which they should be doing. They better get serious now before it's too late. Once that happens, there is no turning back. It won't be pretty. He's also criticised NATO nations, saying they've done absolutely nothing to help with the war with Iran. And although the USA needs nothing from NATO, he says, but never forget, this is a very important point in time. What is going on? Are there talks? And is there any likelihood of any sort of negotiated deal?
Well, I think the prism through which to see this is that Iran's strategy is an economic one. In its view, just as Hamas's strategy was based upon manipulating hearts and minds to produce international pressure on Israel to stop the war, thereby allowing Hamas to survive, the Iranian strategy is to really choke the global economy until global opinion turns so strongly against Donald Trump that the US is forced to withdraw before the regime has toppled. And with that in mind, the Strait of Hormuz has been closed, as we know, by Iran, apart from to some friendly ships from various countries it announced recently. And it's just astonishing that America didn't put in place one of its long-term plans to maintain that Strait of Hormuz, that being open in advance of launching this attack. But we are where we are. I think what we're seeing now is Donald Trump making statements about the imminent end to the war, which have tended to calm the markets and bring the price of oil down every time he makes one of these statements. Iran, in its response, is saying, no, we're not negotiating with you. You're an idiot. We're actually not suffering. We're going to win. And that tempers the effect of Donald Trump's words on the market. So I think really what we're seeing is an economic war of words, Iran trying to inflict maximum damage on the world economy, and Donald Trump trying to buy more time while his military operation presses ahead.
Well, that's it. I mean, one of the downsides to trying to negotiate an end to any of this is if you've actually obliterated most of the senior leadership, and certainly whoever is the current Ayatollah, the son of the former Ayatollah, appears to be severely injured in the same attack that killed his father and his wife and child. We know that American war aims and Israeli war aims are different in terms of the existential threat that Iran and its proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah have posed to Israel. Do you think, I mean, there's some reports that Donald Trump, pretty angry with Netanyahu. They've always had a very close relationship, but sometimes a bit explosive. Do you think there is a difference of opinion over what to do next between those two countries?
I think much of this is really about speculation because the war aims haven't really been clearly published. It's not like what we're, dealing with something with a very clear roadmap and an end goal. The Americans and the Israelis, to some extent, have been keeping it a bit vague, which, to be fair, if you were fighting an enemy that was as cunning as the Iranians, you'd want to do the same thing. You wouldn't want to give them your plan in advance by publishing it. I think that in terms of assassinating the Iranian leadership and the effect that has on negotiations, the Iranian regime has shown itself over decades to be bad faith actors in negotiations. It doesn't want peace. It doesn't want to come to any kind of deal. The only deal it wants is one that causes it to have a tactical pause while it advances its nuclear weapons program. That's about it. And so I wouldn't worry about, nobody there to negotiate. But when it comes to America and Israel, what are their war aims? We don't really know with any great clarity. We don't know whether they're different or the same. I think certainly on both sides of the coin and for Gulf powers as well, top of the list of the wish list, the plan A would be for the regime to topple. Everyone would welcome that, not just in Washington and Jerusalem, but around the Gulf and around the world. That would be amazing. If that doesn't happen, then a regime that is as defanged as possible and perhaps humiliated enough to acquiesce to some kind of deal would be second best. After that, we have less good options. So I think that the idea of daylight between the two powers is perhaps exaggerated sometimes.
Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, is with me in the studio, and he was saying, look, a lot of this is, as a lot of speculation has suggested, that Donald Trump is kind of buying time ahead of perhaps putting troops effectively on the ground to try and seize the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think that is likely in the coming days?
Yeah, I think realistically, if the Strait of Hormuz is going to be opened, then ground troops are going to have to be deployed, whether it's to seize Karg Island or whether it's to combat the Iranian small speed vessels or whatever it is. That does look like it's going to be necessary. And I think Donald Trump finds himself in a position where defeat or victory are but one step away from each other. If he pulls out and leaves the Strait of Hormuz under Iranian control, Iran has basically won. It's proven to the world that the Strait of Hormuz cannot be conquered by any other power, even the US. The US, it's not like it's going to come back and do another war in the next couple of years. Iran has won. If he conquers the Strait of Hormuz and releases the Iranian stranglehold, then the West has decisively won. So I think that really is where this war hinges right now.
Again, you should say an economic war, and we're seeing the economic fallout. The OECD, they've just did a report this morning saying that Britain faces a bigger economic downgrade as a result of the war in the Persian Gulf than any other major country. It's the first proper assessment of the implications of the conflict. We had that statement from the spring statement from Rachel Reeves, which basically was already out of date by the time she was even standing on her feet. Even latest inflation figures for February published this week. Again, already out of date because we've already seen petrol prices, energy prices, behind the scenes going high. But basically, the divergence is largely explained by the fact that we are a major, oil and gas importer, and that is rather than exporter, and that is going to be having an impact. Do you think that economic impact is tempering the willingness of other NATO countries to go along with the United States because they are feeling the fallout of this in a way? And as Donald Trump has said openly, hey, you guys should help me in the Strait of Hormuz because America, we don't get our oil out that way. We've got our own oil. That's not a problem for us. This is your problem. But the allies, the European allies in NATO would be probably thinking, yeah, but it's a problem you've created.
Well, that's right. America has not been affected economically by this war anywhere near as badly as Europe and certainly Britain. It's worth noting that the reason why Britain is being so hard hit or hardest hit in the developed world by this war is our net zero policies. Yep. That's why we've closed down the North Sea. That's why we haven't fracked. That's why we've limited and put tariffs upon our energy production. And that's why we're so heavily reliant on imported fuel so that other people can be responsible for the global emissions rather than us. It's just totally absurd. Yeah. economic security, our fuel security is as egregious a state as our hard security, our army, our navy and our air force, which has been put in such a humiliating position over the past few weeks. We're not a serious country. We're not serious about our own defences. I lament to say under this leadership, we need to build back not just our armed forces, but also our energy resilience, our energy infrastructure, so that we can weather these kind of economic shocks, whether the war is on our doorstep or further afield. But I think that in terms of the global picture, NATO allies are suffering more than the Americans because of their energy vulnerabilities here. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz affects everybody. It's in everybody's interest, not just to have it opened, but to have the Iranian regime toppled once and for all. That's the only thing that's going to stop this from happening again. And it's something that NATO, amazingly enough, is not unified behind.
Yeah. It's interesting. We've had these warnings, of course, about possible, Iranian drone attacks, even a missile attack being capable against us, and the possibility that we've seen the arrest and release on bail of 2 men in their 40s over the firebombing of 4 voluntary ambulances run by a Jewish community group in North London, in Golders Green. And there have been claims online that we haven't seen the evidence to back these claims up, that it could be an Iran-backed group behind this. How concerned are you about that risk to, in particular, the Jewish community from that threat? Because from Iran, we know there are Iranian spies and working on and tracking prominent Jewish figures in the UK. And how concerned are you about that?
Very concerned. I mean, I think that we know for sure that we face not just one type of threat from Iran, but a number of them. We know that we face now a missile threat. The Israelis revealed that a few days ago after Iran reached our Diego Garcia airbase. Didn't hit it, thankfully, but the range was enough to allow it to also hit London if it so wanted. We know that. We know that Iran has, there have been 20 foiled assassination and kidnap plots in Britain over 1 year. Carried out by the Iranian regime. We've seen that firebombing. We've seen other acts of terror. We've seen them trying to infiltrate our nuclear bases. Drones, they've used drone warfare a lot around the world. There's no reason why they couldn't smuggle some in and use them against us. And my fear, really, as I, funnily enough, talk about in a long piece that I've done for the Daily Mail over this weekend, which you can read, is that all of these things cascade at once, including calls on social media, a fatwa-style call from the Ayatollah to attack targets in Britain for lone wolf actors to do that, in the same way as Salman Rushdie was attacked after an Iranian fatwa some years ago. And so all those things converging at once could place us under extreme pressure. And the fact is that economically, in terms of security and militarily, we are woefully unprepared to handle any of that kind of attack. And in that piece, I envisaged the aftermath of a total catastrophe, with Keir Starmer making an announcement saying Britain was not involved in the aggression against Iran. We will not be escalating. We'll be de-escalating, trying to reach a negotiated solution with our international partners. I mean, that's all he ever seems to say. Sometimes you can't talk your way out of this. Nicism has a limit. You have to show deterrence and show strength sometimes if you want to win the peace.
Well, I think you kind of forgot to mention the issue of international law there. Shame on you.
Of course.
Jake Wallace-Simons, always so good to do it. I can't wait to read that piece. Thank you very much, Philip Ingram. If only we'd been warned about this.
Well, exactly. And, as Jake quite eloquently put, you can either protest for peace and write stiff letters for peace, or you can fight for peace. And whenever you're dealing with a bully, you often have to fight for peace, because that's the quickest way of getting it.
Absolutely. 11:49 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Going to be talking to Peter Blexley, former Met Police detective, about, well, a whole load of issues. You don't want to miss it. This is Talk.
is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in Crisis. Subscribe to The Royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:53 is the time. Peter Blexley joins us now. He's a former Metropolitan Police Detective. Good morning to you, Peter.
Good morning.
You're in your car. You're hot-footing it to somewhere exciting, I hope. But I want to talk to you about this ongoing inquiry into the Nottingham attacks that, of course, took place in 2023. I do apologise, where we saw the horrific murders and stabbings of Barnaby Webber-Jones and also another student, Grace O'Malley Kumar, and the 65-year-old Ian Coates. And the evidence that's come out so far, and stuff that came out during the initial court case as well, basically revealing that this man was clearly a danger to himself and others, and that there was this bizarre concern that they didn't want to basically section him and keep him behind psychiatric bars because they didn't want to be seen to be racist. Now, the police, we're told, are just too worried about being labelled racist to tackle dangerous criminals generally. What do you make of this evidence?
Well, this remarkable inquiry has left me, and I'm sure many, many others, in absolute awe, respect and admiration for the Webber family, yep. Emma and David, and, of course, the Grace O'Malley Kumar's relatives and the Coates family, yep. who have conducted themselves with courage, dignity, and been, quite frankly, wonderful. And they're not going to stop until they get answers. Valdo Calacane he played the police, the NHS Trust, Nottingham University, the CPS. He completely gamed the system, and everybody was foolish enough to fall for it.
But he was a sick man. He was a sick man who gamed the system. Maybe he should have been stopped from being able to do so.
He was a manipulator, a master manipulator, because he was not sick all the time. He had moments of absolute clarity and lucid times when he played and gamed the system, right up until, including after his arrest. And all these professionals who claim to be their lanyard-wearing professionals have been played by this man. And they have enabled a situation whereby Calacane went onto the streets of Nottingham, slaughtered 3 wonderful people and left 3 others with life-changing injuries. Absolute shame upon them. And Lord Sewell, a black Tory peer who did a report on racism in this country in 2020 in the light of the George Floyd murder killing, even said himself recently that it's absolutely ridiculous the way that people are bowing down because they are afraid to call matters as they are.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the real worry, the idea that, your child, just at the start of their life, these beautiful young students and a caretaker, with his own children, going about their daily business, the idea they lost their life because someone was too worried about woke ideology that, well, we can't section somebody because they're black because people might think we're racist, even though he's clearly a danger, he's been violent before, he's clearly not taking his medication, and he is a danger if he's on the streets, and allowing that to happen. It's kind of almost impossible for a lot of us to comprehend, and yet we see it happening again and again. Look, we saw that absurd scenario, the Manchester Arena attacker able to attack, wasn't stopped by a security guard because he was concerned. Look, he was a guy who looked like he was Muslim and he's got a big rucksack. I didn't want to tackle him. I didn't want to be accused of racism. We've got to stop this madness because we need to be saving lives, and we definitely absolutely need to stop the madness of care in the community. There is no care, it's just risk in the community, and that's all it is.
Most brilliantly and eloquently put, Julia, and I thank you. I could not top what you've just said. But unfortunately, the seeds of this were sown back in 97 with the previous Labour government and its political correctness movement. It has got to the point now where people are afraid to say facts, to say the truth, for fear of offending people or otherwise causing some kind of offence. And look where it's got us. Dangerous people on the streets murdering people.
Yeah, it's really that simple.
Need to have the courage to stand up and do their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, thank goodness these family members, and it's just like the parents, also the children of Ian Coates as well. He often gets forgotten in all of this, but they are speaking out and pushing for this. And it's only when you get parents who do that, and family members, that you do get to the truth. I just want to ask you very briefly, only got about a minute, but this case of Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, and his report to the police that his phone was stolen. What do you make of the claims and counterclaims?
Follow the evidence. Let's see the evidence. Was there CCTV of that phone being stolen? If so, let's see it. Any detective will tell you, follow the evidence and then the truth will out.
It sounds to me, I'm going to go reading between the lines, you think there probably isn't evidence for that?
I would very much like to see it before coming to any firm conclusion.
Very interesting to speak to you, Peter Bleksley, former Met Police detective. Thank you, as always. He always tells it like it is. He speaks for the nation, he really does. When it comes coming back to the Nottingham killers, and apologies for getting the name wrong of Barnaby Webber. Apologies, I've got a lot of names here. But again, we hear these stories again and again and again, and lessons will be learned, and people die.
Yeah, someone needs to do a bit of analysis to see how many of these woke policies being implemented have resulted in people being murdered, people being raped, and other crimes being committed against them. Because I think if that total ever came out, it would shock us.
Yeah, and again, I think I'm pretty sure they deliberately don't keep a lot of this information, and it's only often when people are very, very honest and they do speak out that we actually find these things out. And it's always shocking, and nothing seems to change. And the people who are in charge, basically, are so busy wagging their fingers, they do actually forget. Again, whether it's grooming gangs, whether it's a black psychiatric patient, they are willing to basically see a loss of life and hurt to innocent people in return for, well, but I'm a virtue signaller, I've got all the right little flags on my Twitter bio. That's what they think. Look, up next, going to talk about Morgan McSweeney. We're going to talk to a Labour MP who thinks the whole thing is one big lie. That's up next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 3 minutes past midday is the time. This is Talk with a Home of Common Sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. You are either listening on DAB+ radio, your smart speaker, you're watching on YouTube, or on your connected device. And whichever it is, very, very happy to have your company. Thank you very much indeed. Very excited earlier this week of having marked on Saturday our 10th anniversary of this station being in existence, and I was doing the 10 o'clock show on that very first day back in March 2016. Very quiet year for news. Very quiet year. Barely anything happened that year at all. But we had a caller a little bit earlier in the week who said he'd been here since day one, and I so appreciate that. And a caller today said he's a brand new convert from some other rival station I may or may not have worked for at some point. So delighted. And if you'd come in between, great to have you as well. We so appreciate you joining us. Lots to talk about. If you've missed anything from the show so far, lots good stuff. You don't want to miss that. Go back and watch on YouTube. I've got a YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to be talking more about the scandal about Morgan McSweeney's stolen phone, or in inverted commas, as a lot of people are saying, stolen phone. We're going to be talking to Labour MP Carl Turner up next. He doesn't think it was stolen at all. We're also going to be talking about a trans trans-identified man who stalked his own trans surgeon, so the woman who actually carried out the surgery on him. He's been convicted of that, and he's been put in, of course he has, a prison for women. We'll be talking about that with Helen Joyce. And also a teenage boy with a hatred of women was advised by an AI chatbot on how to kill his own mother. And we're going to be talking about why Meta and Google are facing a $3 million payout and possibly billions more in the future over their algorithms and the addictive nature of basically the YouTube and Instagram and other sites that they run. We'll be talking about all of that coming up. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that as well. We'll get to your calls. A lot of you getting in touch about Morgan McSweeney and his phone being snatched and the implications there. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Let me just bring in Philip Ingram first of all. He's a MBE, he's a former senior military intelligence officer, and there's never a day when we have him in and I don't think, so you've got that expertise. I'll go through with our next guest a lot of the detail that has been claimed about this, but explain to us why it is significant and why we should be worried about a claim that a chief of staff to the Prime Minister of this country's phone was stolen.
Because of the nature of the material that's on the phone. It may not necessarily be classified per se, because rules don't allow that, but then none of the rules have been followed, it seems, with regard to recording what's on the phone and everything else. And that sensitivity is something that could have been targeted by a hostile intelligence service. And we need to know the length of time it was before it was reported the phone was wiped, and what investigation has gone on by the security services to do a risk mitigation exercise, so that you identify what the risk is and then take mitigations against it if necessary. OK, very interesting. Thank you very much. Well, look, let's talk to a Labour MP, Carl Turner. He's Labour MP for Hull East. He's had various run-ins with the government over the issues like jury trials and much else in recent weeks. And Carl Turner, yesterday you've tweeted, today, I don't believe McSwindle had his iPhone stolen. Yesterday you wrote, the dog ate my homework, defence won't wash. Why do you believe he's lying?
Well, I believe that Morgan McSweeney reported the theft of a mobile phone to the police, but frankly, I don't believe that he had his phone stolen. Why? Because he was the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister in number 10 Downing Street. Frankly, if I had my mobile phone stolen, I would ring the police and I would say, I'm a Member of Parliament. I've been texting the Prime Minister and other cabinet members about things that, frankly, I don't want to be on the front page of any newspaper. And I'm a bit worried that the replies that the Prime Minister has sent me on issues which are about policy might be something that the Prime Minister isn't keen to be publicised. So I'd be concerned. I would also contact number 10 and say, my phone's been nicked. I'm worried because there's information on there which I don't suspect the Prime Minister will be happy about being shared with the nation. Thank you very much. And I would expect somebody to get involved with an investigation. I don't believe it because he didn't say, I am the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister of this country.
And we know this from the transcript the Met Police released. It's very interesting, very unusual for them to release that transcript. They're always very difficult to get information out of, except, of course, when they're being under criticism themselves. And the claim was that he had had his phone stolen by a man on a bike, and who snatched his phone from him when he was using it, and that the police they'd say, we haven't got the resources, we can't investigate. The police showed this, basically, they've published this transcript which says that, well, they couldn't send anyone at the time. I mean, who are we kidding? Does anyone think that police send anyone at the time of your mobile phone being stolen? But they did make 2 phone calls the next day to his private mobile number, no response from him. And we have still to discover whether or not there was actually any effort made by the security staff in number 10 to contact and liaise with the police the next day, given that would apparently be normal protocol. So it is questionable. Let me read you out a statement from Downing Street. They've had a press briefing this morning, and Downing Street dismissed the suggestion that the theft of McSweeney's phone was connected to the parliamentary call for the release of files on Lord Mandelson as, in their words, categorically untrue. Now, Keir Starmer yesterday, published in the papers this morning, he said, the idea that somehow everybody could have seen that sometime in the future there'd be a request for the phone is, to my mind, a little bit far-fetched. Now, the point is actually it was already in the newspapers. It'd been reported that we know that everyone was worried that the Tories were going to demand to see everything, and this was being discussed among Labour officials. It's been reported in the papers. But a statement from number 10 said... So the point the Prime Minister was making when he said it was far-fetched was that the idea that the theft was connected to the Humble Address is categorically untrue. He added, we're committed to complying with the Humble Address in full. This is seeing all the documents in relation to the appointment of Mandelson. The spokesman added, all government departments, ministers and relevant individuals have been asked to provide all the relevant information they hold in the scope of the Humble Address. Now, the trouble with that statement, of course, is that we've been told that Morgan McSweeney's WhatsApp messages with Mandelson have disappeared. They weren't backed up in the cloud, and that they've now gone because of this unfortunate scenario of his phone being stolen. Do you think any of that explanation adds up?
No, I don't, unfortunately. I believe that the Prime Minister believes that Morgan McSweeney had his phone stolen. I've had a Cabinet Minister contact me this morning saying Morgan McSweeney did have his phone stolen because she remembers a conversation she had with Morgan at the very time when he was telling her his phone had been nicked. I believe the PM believes he reported it to the police. I don't believe, frankly, that it was stolen, and that I'm entitled to have that opinion. It's a bit like the Dominic Cummings defence of I went to have my eyes tested and all the rest of the shenanigans that went on in Downing Street under the previous Tory government. But Julia, we came into government holier than thou. Yeah. We were going to be the change government. We were going to be the party of cleanliness, the clean, the decent, the honest.
Integrity, I believe, was going to be restored to government.
Integrity was the first words that the Prime Minister spoke from outside the steps of Downing Street. And we all believed that. The nation were given to understand that this was a competent, more decent, more caring, more kind, more honest Prime Minister who was not going to be allowing any such shenanigans. Regrettably, by saying what the Prime Minister should have said, and if I'd have been advising him, I'd have said, you can go out on telly and speak to Beth at Sky, and you can say, I believe that Morgan reported his phone stolen to the police. I'm not prepared to go any further than that. If you want to ask Morgan McSweeney, go and doorstep the guy. But all I'm telling you is there was a report to the police, and anybody that is stupid enough to make a false complaint to the police is balmier than I could have ever
not only
given
that,
him credit for.
they're committing a criminal act, and that's the interesting thing when people are
Correct.
saying that he didn't. So there is a phone call, and with Prime Minister's comment on, there is a phone call. We know the police had that report, whether or not the phone was stolen. What is interesting, I think one of the key things here is that the reports that we've seen for the last few days have claimed that Morgan McSweeney's phone was snatched by a man on a bike wearing a balaclava. The really strange thing is, at no point does he mention the balaclava in his phone call with the police, despite giving quite a detailed description of it's quite a lengthy conversation, anyone who's read the full transcript. And he says he was a black guy, he describes he was young, he was slim. He at no point mentions the balaclava, which you'd think was a kind of crucial detail there.
Well, look, look, let's just be realistic about it. I think this was in Pimlico, right?
Except he gave an address which was actually in Stepney.
All right, fine. But in London, when I'm in London, I look up in the sky and I see CCTV cameras everywhere, right? If I rang Plod and said, excuse me, Mr. Plod, I've just had my phone snatched by a geezer on a bike, if that's what it was, wearing a balaclava, etc., but he didn't mention this, and I work for the Prime Minister, they would, in my view, be onto the CCTV cameras, which are run by the city, tracking the man who nicked the camera.
But they thought it was happening. It happened miles away in Stepney because he gave the wrong road name.
Well, all right then. But look, you start to speak about it and you say, well, actually, I might have that wrong. Look, it's just... I'm sorry. If Morgan McSweeney wants to bother to be cheesed off about what I'm saying, let him get on with his lawyers and sue me. I don't believe you, Morgan. I think you're making it up. I think you rang the police. I can ring the police this afternoon and say I'm terribly sad. My father left me a Rolex watch in his will. I've lost it. When I get to the point of reporting it to the insurance company as being nicked when it's not nicked, that's when I commit a serious criminal offence. And if I put a claim in and I'm found out, I go to nick.
Yeah.
Anybody can report something to the police which doesn't happen to be true. And I don't believe Morgan McSweeney and never will.
Okay.
Frankly.
I'm sure he would deny, I'm sure for legal reasons, you say that he would deny that, but a lot of people are saying this is all very fishy. Why do you think he would have lied about it, though?
For the obvious reason, we all knew what the opposition were going to be doing. We used to do the humble address time and again if the information that we were getting from government wasn't transparent enough for us and we thought we could make a political point. We did it time and again under the Boris Johnson government. If memory serves, I think we did it under Truss as well. Whips are not simple. They know the tricks of the trade. They know what to do to get information out of government. You put a prayer, an humble address in Parliament. It gives the government a certain period of time to come out with information that you request. You don't vote against it normally, because if you do vote against it, the public say to you what you're trying to hide. That's an easy thing to do. We knew it was coming. As soon as the Mandelson appointment was public, we got rid of him for the reasons the Prime Minister decided to get rid of him on. We knew what was going to be coming next. And my point is, that's why the public won't believe it.
Okay.
Even if it's true.
Okay, here's the thing. At the very best, he was very, very unlucky, wasn't he? Here's the thing. Again, I've got, someone who's a former senior military intelligence officer in the studio pointing out that actually this stuff could easily be tracked by GCHQ. This stuff is all backed up. Whether it's on a government, the third-party server or not, this stuff would be findable anyway. So not entirely sure any of this actually works. But doesn't this come down to not Morgan McSweeney, a man who, let's face it, outside of Westminster, most people had never even heard of before he even resigned over the Mandelson affair and his poor judgment in pushing Mandelson as the ideal appointment for the UK ambassador to Washington. But actually it comes back to the Prime Minister. Because if, as you say, Morgan McSweeney actually has lied, an allegation you are making, I'm sure he would deny, you've got a Prime Minister who's appointed best pals with a convicted paedophile, who there are numerous allegations that have come out since, but there was certainly enough information, I think we can all agree, to make him a very poor choice for the appointment in the first place, who's appointed him as our US ambassador, who's employed a chief of staff who you're making and who pushed that and override the security vetting, and you're now claiming may have committed a criminal act in lying to the police. That's an allegation you are making. I'm sure he would deny, I must stress. But that says a lot about the Prime Minister's judgment, doesn't it?
Well, look, I looked at what the Prime Minister said to the Sky interview, and I genuinely think that the Prime Minister believed that Morgan McSweeney had his phone stolen. I do.
Well, he genuinely believed that Peter Mandelson wasn't still mates with Jeffrey Epstein. He's not got a very good nose for these things, has he?
Well, look, it's troubling, isn't it? Because, if you're told a thing, do you take that as gospel or do you test it a little bit? That's the issue.
But is this about the Prime Minister's judgment?
Well, I think it goes to the judgment of the PM, whether we like it or not. I'm not very keen to have to cough that to you right now, Julia. I'm not happy about having to fess up to you in an interview that it goes to the PM's judgment, but of course it does, doesn't it? Regrettably. Now, that's not my fault. I'm trying to protect the Prime Minister as much as I can. I'm a Labour MP. But when there's a question around things of this nature, the appointment of Mandelson, against his better instinct, I suspect, because I know Keir Starmer well, I suspect he was suspicious. He was probably very cautious. He was probably very reluctant. But in my view, it doesn't go to the judgment as much as it goes to the Prime Minister's over-reliance on what turned out to be really crap advice. Time and time and time again.
But that tells you about his judgment. That tells you about his competence. That tells you about his lack of, the fact that he was pointing a man who had the most senior diplomatic role in the whole of the British government, and he didn't even bother having a meeting with him. Didn't even bother putting a call into him.
Well, it's a strange scenario, in my opinion, that you would have Morgan McSweeney and Matt Doyle, who are effectively asking questions of Peter Mandelson, and then those two, who were known to be mates of Mandy, going back to the PM and saying, these are the answers to the questions, Prime Minister, there's nothing to see here. Yeah. They had an ulterior motive. They wanted Mandelson in the job. I suspect the Prime Minister wanted him in the job. Why? Because he was seen as the whisperer to Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, again, a bizarre view. Look, let me ask you something else about the Prime Minister's judgment. Yesterday at PMQs, he was asked a number of questions by Kemi Badenoch, 3 of which he gave pretty much the same answer to. And this was regarding about dropping net zero because of the economic impact of the Iran war. And we've seen from the OECD report today that we're going to be the hardest hit of major Western nations as a result of our over-reliance on oil and gas imports for our energy needs. But Keir Starmer said that when he was asked about drilling for oil licences or new oil and gas licences in the North Sea, giving permission for licences for new drilling in the North Sea, he repeatedly said he had no power to approve more licences, and the quasi-judicial role in terms of the final call on that lay with the Energy Secretary, of course, Ed Miliband. Is that a plausible answer from a Prime Minister who appoints the Energy Secretary? That job is entirely within his powers to say, it's got nothing to do with me, Gov, it's up to him?
Well, the Prime Minister is right to say that the legislation dictates that the Energy Secretary, the person in that job, the Secretary
of State, but he decides the person in the job.
But, I mean, it does tend to make you think. When I was sat there listening, I thought, well, what are you saying then? Will the real Prime Minister please stand up? You're the gaffer. You're supposed to be in charge. If you want licences, if you want to extend licences, get on and tell Miliband, get him in a room and say, right, do the job. I'm telling you, I'm the PM, I'm the governor here. Look, just stand outside, Edward. Just have a look at that number 10 door. Whose name's above it? It says Keir Starmer. I'm the gaffer. I'm telling you what to do.
So is Ed Miliband secretly running this government? He was rejected by the electorate back in 2015 when he was Labour leader as the Labour Prime Minister, and is he now actually effectively holding the Prime Minister to ransom, and he's in charge? And we're going to go into the economic. We're probably going to end up in a recession as a result of this war in Iran because of our over-reliance on fossil fuels and his absurd, hysterical, zealotry for net zero policies that is going to basically make us poorer. And the Prime Minister's not doing anything about it because basically Ed Miliband runs the show.
Well, look, I don't think he does run the show, to be honest with you. I think my experience of Keir Starmer is that he's very much in charge, actually, and sometimes in charge to the point where he's not prepared to listen to a discussion.
Jury trials, etc. Yeah.
Cabinet ministers. But the reality is, it's been said before that Ed Miliband is too much in control. He was apparently going to be moved in the reshuffle, and apparently he resisted that, and the Prime Minister decided against it. Look, for what it's worth, I think we should be extending licences. I think it's balmy to be having the resource there and not tapping into it, right? I do accept, though, that actually it's sold on the world global market and it is dictated to by a price cap which is a sort of global cap and a market.
There's not a global cap. We're buying our gas and oil on a global market, and yet and yet our prices for fuel and for heating our homes are higher than they are in Europe and in America.
The supply issue. The supply issue is there, Julia. If we're doing it, we get the more supply. That's a fact.
We also get the tax.
Start selling it, and we do massive 42 billion. I think we're missing out on as a result of not bother tapping into it. And for jobs, I say dig, get the gas, do all the rest of it. Well, let's just talk about judgment for a second.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I've got to get you to concede something. The Prime Minister was right not to run headlong in to a war in Iran. He was right to resist.
I don't know. I mean, I disagree. I disagree with you, actually.
Really?
I disagree with you. He didn't make a decision. He just sat on the fence long enough and dithered long enough that it all happened without him. If he wanted to make proper decisions, he would have been sending our warships ready to the area to protect things like, RAF base in Cyprus, and he didn't.
Well, I happen to think he did the right thing to resist Trump. I don't think it was so much a Love Actually moment, but it was nearly there, in my view. I think
he fumbled his way into a position that people don't hate. I don't think that was a big win for the Prime Minister. Can I ask you about one final issue?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not going to concede that.
I like you a lot. I'm sorry you won't concede a point. It's disappointing to me.
No, because I don't think he made a decision.
Okay.
I think he accidentally fell into it. I don't believe for a moment he made a decision. He can't make a decision on anything, for goodness sake, Carl. Who are we kidding? There's been a lot of anger over the fact we've seen the number of asylum seekers in taxpayer-funded accommodation for over a year. It's surged by 40% in the last 18 months. Oh, is that when you've been in power? Yes, it is. More than 37,000 asylum seekers in accommodation, whether it's hotels, whether it's houses of multiple occupancy, bedsits and the like. We're still paying for these people. Prime Minister said he was going to, he was going to deal with the gangs, he was going to smash the gangs, he was going to stop the boats. He hasn't. We've seen over 1,000 people come in the last week alone, and we're still paying for all these people, and we're not really getting rid of any of them. And the ones we do get rid of to France, some of them either just come back again, but more have arrived from France than we've sent back. None of this is working, is it?
Well, it's not, and the reality is we're not sending them back. That's just the truth. There's appeals, there's asylum and immigration appeals. The tribunal says get them out, get rid of them. They're not allowed to stay. They don't go back. That's the problem we're in. And the reality is I don't know what the answer is. I truly don't know what the answer is. I'm glad I'm not tasked with the job of getting rid of people who should be here.
Scrapping stupid human rights laws so you can actually deport people who've got no right to be here.
Well, it's not right either. I mean, Farage can spout all this nonsense about human rights and all the rest of it. Just not true. It wouldn't work.
That's not true.
Because people would still get themselves here, Julia.
Yeah, they get here, and then you can get rid of them.
And where would you send them?
And you wouldn't be putting them up in accommodation. They wouldn't be on a free-for-all.
I'm not saying give in. I'm saying have proper application systems. Have a proper system where they can apply for asylum.
This lot wouldn't get in. This lot wouldn't get in. They'd still come by boat because they know they can.
Well, the reality is, let's be honest, we had the Dublin 3 regs and that didn't work apparently at the time, but it did to the extent that they didn't come in the channel. They've been coming since Brexit.
They came on lorries, mate. They came on lorries.
What, on the underside of lorries? How many underside of the lorry?
We had tens of thousands on. We had tens of thousands coming through.
1,000 under one lorry?
We had.
You get 500 in a dinghy, Julie.
They don't get 500 in a dinghy. It's about 80 in a dinghy. No.
Well, you can get 3 or 4 dinghies with a few hundred. But the reality is they're going to come more now, right? Because the sun's starting to shine. What do you expect me to say? It's just the reality. But what I will say to you is, when you're making incentives for them to come by saying if you get here and you've got a family with you, we'll give you 40,000 quid to go back from when you came. I think that's balmy in my view.
Well, we certainly agree. Let's end on a note of agreement. Carl Turner, great to have you on. I love your free talking. I appreciate that. I'm sure the Prime Minister won't, but Labour MP for Holly's Carl Turner, Philip Ingram, listening to that with a wry smile on your face throughout that. Look, he basically said, let's go back to Morgan McSweeney, let him sue me. He says this is up there with Dominic Cummings and that eye test at Barnard Castle. And he says he believes, the Prime Minister believes that the phone a phone theft was reported to the police. He does not believe, he said categorically, does not believe that Morgan McSweeney's phone was actually stolen.
Carl's talking a lot of sense, and he's the thing that the Prime Minister fears most. A backbench Labour MP who's rebelling against...
But no axe to grind against the government.
No axe to grind, and he describes Keir Starmer as a friend. How many other backbench Labour MPs, after the May elections, are going to suddenly go, we need to be in Carl Turner's camp?
Absolutely. 12:27 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:30 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls about an extraordinary conversation with the Labour. He was a Labour MP, guys, Carl Turner, basically saying he doesn't believe that the Prime Minister's former chief staff had his phone stolen. He believes the Prime Minister believes that it was. He said basically, let him sue me. He said that Dominic is up there with Dominic Cummings claiming to get his eye tested when he drove to Barnard Castle. He's also critical of the Prime Minister over the net zero issues as well. Again, that's friendly fire, folks. Let's go to the phone lines. 0344 499 1000. Michael is on the line in Hertfordshire. Hello, Michael. What do you want to say?
Good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon.
It's about the energy. Starmer gets up in Parliament and says it's up to my energy minister, Siliband, to make the decision. I wouldn't trust him to run the toilets in Parliament. We have an emergency. We need North Sea oil. Never mind, it will be the same price when it comes out. It will be nearer. It will give people jobs. It will get companies to pay taxes here. And our Prime Minister, who I did have some respect for, but I've lost it completely, has got to get a set of balls. And I don't mean Ed.
No, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more on that front. What did you make of what Carl Turner had to say? His criticism of the Downing Street generally, I think, and the Prime Minister over the Morgan McSweeney affair.
I just think, why pick one item? There's nothing they've done that's been correct so far. It's just, the whole thing is ridiculous. The whole thing stinks, and there should be an investigation.
Yeah, well, yeah, there certainly is. Certainly looks like there is.
Unfortunately, we could talk about Labour's mistakes for a week. It's just becoming embarrassing.
That's me. I've only got 3 hours. Yeah.
And it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I've only got 3 hours a day. We're always like, how do we squeeze us all in and cover it all? Michael, thank you so much for that. Cliff is on the line. He's in Slovakia. Hello, Cliff. Are you living there or are you on holes?
No, I live here. I got out when the going was good.
One of the wise ones. What do you want to say, my love?
Yeah, I was talking to the guy who took the call and said I was in the police service. I had a high level of vetting, and I had a phone that went along with that.
Yeah.
And there was nothing that went on that phone which wasn't able to be recorded.
Yeah.
And any digital communication, i.e. messaging, was recorded and kept. Now, the Met and these various people saying that will prejudice the case, it's a nonsense. If the Met have that evidence, they should be taking it forward, and they have all the powers they need to go to Mr. Starmer and whoever it is, whoever else would be involved in this message convoy, and to look at those messages. They have a power to do that.
This is the weird thing.
There's a reason they're not doing it.
Well, that's the thing. But the conspiracy theory around this, which is that, oh, well, the phone wasn't stolen, and that and then it was all done basically to hide these messages because you now can't access these messages. Surely they would know whether or not the messages could be accessed or not, in which case that kind of all falls down if that was the cunning plot.
Well, I would imagine if that phone was stolen and he reported it immediately to his provider, the phone would have been killed anyway.
Well, no, we know he reported to number 10 and it was killed immediately. But again, there's immediately. He'd already chased up the road, he claims, against the cyclist. So you lose a couple of minutes there, getting through on the Downing Street. I mean, I know Downing Street switchboard is pretty slow unless you go to a direct number. He would have had a direct number. But, you know, you're talking about 2 or 3 minutes to get this stuff done. And that's enough time if it was... You know, if it was a nefarious act to take in the phone, that's enough time to take the information. But you just think the whole thing doesn't add up?
None of it adds up, because even if the phone was taken in the circumstances, taken, he's gone ahead now and made a report of crime, which if it's not a crime, that's an offence, as you've discussed earlier. Okay? So he's kind of, I don't want to use the word on air, but it's it rhymes with rugged.
Not a rhyme I've heard before. Cliff in Slovakia, thank you very much indeed. Philip, I mean, again, lots of allegations being made, you know. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know. I'm sure he would absolutely deny, of course, you know, making a false police claim. The question about, was the phone stolen? Did he give us the right information given? What, you know, have these messages disappeared? And why would anyone want these messages to disappear and what the hell was on them?
Number 10 could fix this instantly by coming out with the truth.
Yeah.
But this continuation of cover-up and running ministers out with different statements, and they clearly haven't read the same memo and they're getting inconsistencies across the board, just reinforces the fact that this is a complete and utter cover-up, and there's more to
And if
hide.
I were a government minister and I knew I was going to be asked about this, I would definitely say, like, right, I want to, you know, hey, Morgan, hello, I've still got your number from when you were Chief of Staff.
Yeah.
Can you tell me just right, so I can say, I was told, right, put that in a message. So, you know, I mean, that's the thing. It's all very bizarre, isn't it? Anyway, we're going to take a quick break for a little moment. First up, though, I've got another competition for you. We are giving you the chance to win a life-changing £20,000, completely tax-free, here on Talk. That's £20,000 straight into your bank account. Spend it, save it, splash it. It's entirely up to you. I spend it on holidays, as you know. Here's how you could be in the chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 9th of April 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
A very good luck with that. Up next, we are going to be talking about, yet again, a man claiming to be a woman getting put into a woman's prison. Even though he's not a man, he's not a woman, he's a man. So why on earth is that happening? We'll talk to Helen Joyce about that. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:39 is the time. Let's turn our attention to, yet more madness. I don't know why I'm ever surprised by this. This stuff happens all the time. There are already some cases of this already in existence in this country. But an extraordinary story of a transgender prisoner. The headlines keep saying things like trans woman. No, it's a trans-identified man by the name of Vivian Taylor, who apparently was born a man. That means he is still a man. He extraordinarily had gender reassignment surgery and then began to stalk the woman surgeon who carried out that surgery on him. He was sentenced to 14 months behind bars after pleading guilty to causing serious alarm or distress to Tina Rashid when he was stalking her. He has now been put into a women's prison, even though he is quite clearly a man. Let's talk about this with Helen Joyce. She's Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters, also author of the brilliant book Gender Identity and the New Battle for Women's Rights. Good afternoon to you again, Helen. Once again, the thing that never happens has happened again, hasn't it?
Yes, so this man is being held in Downview in a wing that's called the Wing E, which is specially for men who identify as women who are regarded as not suitable for being held in the men's prison. Now, that suitability includes thinking about what it is they need in the way of their womanly identities. Incredibly, when the policy was set up that these men could be put there, they decided that it wasn't okay to hold these men in the men's prison because it wouldn't give them enough access to women. That was the phrase used, access to women, so that they could practice being women, basically. Like they could live their womanly identities.
I'm sorry. I'm assuming this was the only justification for this that it could give would be that, you know, it's just for their safety. If someone identified as trans and they had actually could pass vaguely as if they were a woman, they would be at high risk of being raped behind bars if they were in a male prison, and this was for their own safety. But not. Explain to us just again, for people who were spitting out their tea when you said that, what are the justifications?
Yeah. So the policy dates from before the For Women Scotland judgment, and the starting point was the wrong starting point, which is that some men have gender recognition certificates, which mean that they are legally women, and that therefore they have extra rights to be considered as women compared with other men who just say that they're women. And then they, a moment's sanity intervenes and they think to themselves, well, some of these men with GRCs are actually rapists and murderers and the like. So they said that they would make this wing and it would be for people who had really the most claim a man could have on being called a woman, which in my opinion is zero, but also weren't risks to women. Now, how a man who has stalked a woman for so long, most people who do stalking don't get custodial sentences at all. They get told, don't be so naughty and don't do it again. And this man's been given 14 months, which suggests to you that it's very bad. Now, he has, as you said, had his genitals removed, which means that there's a certain sort of risk that he is not to women.
Yes.
However, he's still a man. He looks like a man, he sounds like a man, he is as strong as a man, he is bigger than women, he is all those other things. None of those things change when men have genital surgery. And yes, okay, he's in this separate wing at night, so he's not sharing, a cell or even a corridor or showers with women. But women's prisons are sort of much more open than men's prisons, and you spend much more of your time out of the cell because women are not as dangerous as men.
It's almost like there'd be an incentive to try and get yourself into a women's prison if you're a man, isn't there? Weirdly.
Yeah, and I just don't see why they're pandering to these men, because they accept that men who are dangerous to women can be held in the men's jails, and they may actually be at severe risk too, because some of them will have committed the sort of crime that gets you treated very badly in a men's prison. So if they can protect the paedophiles and protect the ex-prison officers, protect the corrupt police officers, protect pretty young gay boys. If they can do all of that in men's jails, they can protect the men who say that they are women.
Well, exactly.
Too.
If they are unsafe to be in the main prison population, then they can be in isolation units or protected areas within a male prison because they are men.
There are a lot of vulnerable men. There's a lot of vulnerable men in prison, lots and lots of them. All the women in prison are vulnerable to men. There should be no women. And by the way, Downview Wing E was intended to be a facility that they were going to use for women who were on long sentences coming towards their release to help them to be rehabilitated and to move on.
So the women have lost out on that facility. Well, this is always the case whenever there's a concern for trans-identified men. Again, what still, it stresses me as a Telegraph, you should know better. Trans woman calling, Vivian Taylor, born a man. He is a man. If you're born a man, you're always a man. You don't stop being a man, whatever a little piece of paper says, or whether you've had your tonsure cut off or not. Now, OK, we can be a bit more reassured in terms of, as you say, not able to actually use his own penis to rape. But we have seen cases in women's prisons, not just in Britain, in America, in other countries, where men claiming to be trans-identified, again, we've no idea what they actually think, have been put in prison cells overnight with women where women have been sexually assaulted and women have been raped. We know it's a risk. But look, this isn't the only man who is in a women's prison, either in England or indeed in Wales or Scotland. And we had, of course, the Isla Bryson case, which pretty much did for Nicola Sturgeon's career as First Minister of Scotland, over her utter refusal to say that, yes, Isla Bryson, quite clearly a man, despite the wig, wearing the tight leggings, which clearly showed off his meat and two veg. I mean, he was actually mocking everybody by claiming he was a woman, and refusing to say that he was a man.
So there have been and still are men, dangerous men, held in the women's estate, the ordinary women's estate in Scotland. What the policy up there is that if your crime was, if you were violent against a woman, they wouldn't put you into the women's estate, but they put men who murdered men into the
I'd still be
women's
pretty
estate.
scared of one of those guys.
Well, I know. I don't think they're going to say, well, I only like murdering men and I'll be really very nice and gentlemanly towards the women. But, we've got another case just in the last couple of days, a chap called Oren Makepeace, who's another trans-identifying man. He's just been found guilty of murdering, inverted commas, her ex-partner. And both the CPS and the local police force, which is Cheshire, put out statements talking about how a woman had murdered her ex-partner. One of them did at least give it the aim away by saying they met in a men's prison, at which point you're like, how do they do that? But anyway, yeah, so they're two men. The one who identifies as trans murdered his partner and has now been found guilty of murder. And the CPS has taken down its original post about this, which literally didn't use the words male, men, prison, any of those things, trans even. It was just woman murdered her
This is where facts, we say when it's basic biology, when it's the NHS, when it's the prison service, the police, the courts, it is vital that we use facts. Words have meaning. Otherwise, I'm holding up a mug right now. I can just say, this is a table. I've decided that this word means table, and you all have to just flow along with me. Except lots of people wouldn't know, so we wouldn't know whether we were talking about a mug or a table. That's why we have words like male and female, why we have words like woman and man, so we know what we mean by them. The reality is, of course, that actually the rate of men who claim to be trans and claim to think that they are women, it's amazing how often this is suddenly declared around the time that they are arrested or charged with a crime against women, and an incredibly high rate of trans-identified men in prison who've been convicted of very violent sex crimes against women. I mean, that must just be a complete coincidence, Helen.
I mean, these policies lead to reasonably foreseeable outcomes, and then these things happen and you're called a bigot for pointing them out, or people go, oh, it's a tiny number. So Rebecca Paul MP, who, Downview is on her patch, she did raise this issue yesterday with Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and he did say that he would look into it.
Oh, good.
But you know what? That policy was actually created specifically. Downview was converted for these men. This is literally the purpose it's intended to be put to, although, why this particular man is qualified to go into it, I don't know. All of this is just obviously going to happen. I don't know how naive you have to be to think it won't.
But I don't understand. We had the Supreme Court ruling, almost a year ago now. We've still got the government, parliamentary estate, the NHS, numerous councils, schools, absolutely blankly refusing to enact the Supreme Court ruling, the highest court in the land, and made it very clear if it's a service or aimed at single sex, if it's for women and girls, there must be no men, i.e. biological males, using that service. It's not complicated. You don't have to be a lawyer to understand this stuff.
So what the prison service says is they're not a service, which is just, lawyerly nitpicking nonsense. And then there's just this really sad calculation that lots and lots more men are lifers than are women. Hardly any women are lifers. Yeah. And one of the hobbies that men can have is taking legal cases. So they think these men will take legal cases against them. The women are mostly in on short sentences. They want to keep their head down, keep their nose clean, get out to their families. So they're just doing a risk assessment of their own, which is who's going to kick off. And to hell with the women at risk. It's mind-blowing. Thank you, as always, for talking about this stuff. Helen Joyce from Sex Matters. Philip Ingram.
I know you can spot people say there's more important things in life. These are men who are at risk they're a risk to women, and the most vulnerable women behind bars, and everyone's going, well, we don't really care.
100%. Just because you've had your meat and two veg removed doesn't mean that you are now a woman, and therefore, individuals should be put into somewhere that is safe and separate from, prison populations if they need to be protected from the male prison population. But in a male prison.
It's not complicated. There's nothing complicated about this.
Where it's then stopping women going into a rehabilitation centre to get them back into society, that's just wrong.
Yeah, well, it's always women who end up losing out. 12:49 is the time. We're going to talk up next about that extraordinary case of Meta and Google both being found liable for a woman's sort of basically mental health problems after she was basically online as a child for many, many hours of the day. But was that the right decision by the jury? That's up next for Joe Bartosh. This is Talk.
The Crown is facing its gravest test in decades, and the royalty from Talk is your front row seat. With royal reputations under pressure and probing questions about public trust, we unpack every twist and revelation with the biggest names in the business. From the throne room at Buckingham Palace to a mansion in Montecito, we follow every royal ripple. Never miss a moment of The Crown in crisis. Subscribe to the royalty from Talk on the app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. Just the last few moments of my show here at Talk, Home of Common Sense, and I want to talk about, well, whether it was a common sense decision by the jury in California that took 40 hours of deliberation to decide that Meta, which owns Instagram, and Google, which owns YouTube, were both liable for a woman's social media addiction as a young child and her subsequent mental health problems, and they were ordered to pay her $3 million. Well, let's talk about this with assistant editor of The Critic, Joe Bartosh. A very, very good afternoon to you.
Hello, lovely to be here.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's an extraordinary case. It's been going on for a very long time. We had to wait 9 days, wasn't it, for the juries to do their deliberation. But this is a 20-year-old woman, Kaylee, and she claimed she was on YouTube at 6, she was on Instagram at 9, she was on all day, massively affected her mental health, and it's all the big tech companies' fault. My first reaction reading this was, no, it's not. It's your parents' fault. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of both. Ultimately, I think this has been a long time in the coming. I think we're going to have a reckoning. This could well open the floodgates, I think. I think it's a little bit like cigarettes. For a long time, it just wasn't acknowledged. It wasn't taken seriously that actually these products are addictive. So I think you can say, yes, parents should have take some responsibility. But these products were designed to be addictive, and the companies knew that, and parents, for the most part, didn't. Most parents have no idea what their kids are looking at.
No, I get that aspect of it, and I hold no candle for any of these big companies, and they know exactly what they're doing. We've had far too many very former senior whistleblowers who've said, look, no, we were designing algorithms to keep people on, to keep kids on, and often, the doom scrolling. So if you look at something about depression or anorexia, you just get inundated with that stuff, and we've seen those cases. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is a very young child, of primary school age, who is sitting apparently on her phone all day. That's a parenting issue. I don't have to think that something's addictive. I wouldn't let my kid do that all day.
I don't think it is entirely a parenting issue. I think it's a bit like, you know, you can have irresponsible parents that let their kids, you know, do drugs. You still have a law that says they're illegal. I mean, just because some parents are responsible doesn't mean...
But we prosecute those parents. We would prosecute those parents. I hope.
Yeah, and I think actually, I mean, across the world now, there are lots of governments which are thinking about bringing in bans for social media for children, which I think is a logical and sensible thing to do if we acknowledge that it does cause harm. And you know, in the UK, there has been a 4-fold increase in mental health diagnoses amongst young children over the past 20 years. So you know, it's obvious that maps onto smartphone use. I mean,
no, it doesn't. No, there's a correlation. There isn't a. We don't know the causation. And again, is it using smartphones or is it the stuff they're not doing? Is it the fact their parents aren't talking to them because they're on their smartphones and they're not playing sport, they're not talking to people? It's the stuff they're not doing that's damaging them.
It is, but at the same time, if those products are designed to be addictive, which we know they are,
so is Coca-Cola.
Well, yeah, and now we've got, you know, they took the cocaine out of Coca-Cola. I think it's kind of the
there
same.
really was. No, but the sugary drinks, high salt food, fatty food, it's all designed to be addictive. I mean, a company's allowed to, I mean, are they legally allowed to do that, I suppose, is what's the moral duty there?
I mean, I can't help thinking there's possibly a parallel here to like the Industrial Revolution, if you like, you know, when things sort of progressed at such a speed and then suddenly workers' rights became a thing and then suddenly consumer rights became a thing. And I think now that people are in effect the product, we're having to think about what the impact of these new business models are on the brain. So I think actually, in a way, it's kind of a logical step. It's just the law catching up with technology.
And it's been often the law is always running slightly behind and they get around it. Again, I'm holding no candle for these big tech companies who are making billions by pretending they're all nice and lovely and cuddly when actually say we are not the customer, we are the product that is being sold, and they're making billions out of us. And they seem remarkably unbothered about the damage it does, whether it's paedophiles contacting children on social media or just kids being on this stuff for hours and hours on end. I mean, I despair of the parents who don't get on top of this. I think it's different if a kid is 16 and it's much harder to sort of deal with it. You don't know what they're doing. They've got a lot more privacy. I think if you don't know what your 6-year-old or your 9-year-old is doing, I think you're not doing your job as a parent properly. End of.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to an extent, but at the same time, I think we've got to kind of protect those kids whose parents are a bit rubbish.
Yeah,
You know,
that's doing it. That is a fair point. That is a fair point. Let me also ask you about another front page story today. This is a story about a young man. I mean, this is awful. Tristan Roberts, diagnosed with autism and ADHD. I mean, isn't everyone these days? Spending hours a day in a toxic online world where he sort of talks about depraved fantasies of violence, of murder, absolutely obsessed with it. And basically, he on his 18th birthday, he basically bought a hammer, razor blades, and he lured his mother, devoted mother apparently, to her death, where he bludgeoned her to death, and he was advised by an AI bot how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to become more and more of a thing. AI psychosis is now starting to be recognised as something that is, you know, it effectively plays on those patterns in the brain without any sort of check, without any human interacting and saying, you know, we need to perhaps have a human in the loop, if you like. We need these things to go through some sort of check, and for these, you know, if somebody is looking that up, surely that should trigger something and make the the managers at these companies go, hang on, what's happening here? You know, there must be combinations of keywords that could be looked into to stop this happening. Yeah, it's terrifying.
I mean, it absolutely is. And again, these AI bots, I mean, seem to have too much of a mind of their own, a bit too intelligent. Very, very worrying. I'm sure we're going to be discussing this many, many times again in the future. As you say, Joe Barter, assistant editor at The Critic, thank you very much indeed for that. Philip Ingram, you're a former senior military intelligence officer. How concerned are you about the AI bot side of things, or indeed addictive, social media?
Well, social media is designed to be addictive, and this is where your parents need to step up. Society needs to step up and recognise it and do that. But AI is something that we've only just started to scratch the surface of, and AI is going to become something that is going to take this addiction and take it to the next level. Yeah. We need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is going to go crazy, isn't it? I'm delighted to say, well, I'm not delighted, I'm not seeing Ian Collins today, but I'd like to say that Mark Dolan is here to take over for Ian Collins for the day. Hello. No.
As always, Julia, you said the true bit out loud.
Did I?
Because you are so...
gutted. Mark's here.
Her superpower, Julia's superpower is her honesty.